The Tulsa Race Massacre, which took place in 1921, stands as one of the darkest and most tragic chapters in American history. It occurred in Glenwood, a prosperous African-American community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, often referred to as Black Wall Street due to its thriving economy and vibrant culture. The story of this massacre underscores deep-seated racial tensions and the consequences of envy and hatred fueled by systemic racism. During the early 20th century, Glenwood was a beacon of hope and success for Black Americans. The community was home to successful Black-owned businesses, a flourishing neighborhood with shops, theaters, schools, and churches, all managed by skilled and determined African Americans who had established themselves despite the oppressive segregation laws of the time. The prosperous environment fostered pride and ambition among its residents, creating a safe haven where they could build their dreams. However, this success bred animosity. In May 1921, an incident involving a young Black man, Dick Rowland, and a young white woman, Sarah Page, altered the course of history for Glenwood. Rowland was arrested after being accused of assaulting Page, although the details of the encounter remain unclear and are widely believed to have been exaggerated. As word of the incident spread, it ignited racial tensions in the broader Tulsa community, leading to a gathering of white residents who demanded Rowland's lynching. In an act of solidarity, a group of Black residents, including many World War I veterans, organized to protect Rowland. They arrived at the courthouse where he was held, anticipating a confrontation. Instead of calm dialogue, a white mob gathered, and tensions escalated. The situation spiraled out of control, leading to chaos. On May 31st, 1921, a confrontation erupted, resulting in violence that would last for 2 days. The white mob, fueled by rage and resentment, launched a full-scale attack on Glenwood, destroying homes, businesses, and places of worship. Airplanes were even used to drop incendiaries on the community, an unprecedented act of brutality. Many residents were killed, and thousands were left homeless as the neighborhood was reduced to ashes. It is estimated that in the aftermath, over 300 Black residents lost their lives, while over 1,000 homes and businesses were destroyed. In the wake of the massacre, the silence surrounding the events only deepened the tragedy. Newspapers of the time often neglected to report the full extent of the violence or the suffering of Black residents, focusing instead on sensationalized narratives that demonized them. This lack of coverage meant that the horrors endured by the community were largely forgotten or minimized in the years that followed, perpetuating a cycle of erasure. In the years since, survivors and their descendants have fought to reclaim their history, seeking recognition and reparations for the loss they endured. Various efforts have emerged to commemorate the massacre and honor the legacy of Glenwood. Memorials, educational initiatives, and community events aim to bring awareness to what occurred during that fateful time in 1921, encouraging a more comprehensive understanding of racial violence in America. While the Tulsa Race Massacre may not be included in many history textbooks, the lessons it offers are profound. It serves as a reminder of the consequences of hatred and division, urging us to examine the complexities of race relations in America and acknowledge the resilience of those who have suffered immense injustices. The rebuilding of Glenwood, in the years that followed, was a testament to the strength and determination of the community, showcasing their unwavering spirit even in the face of systemic violence. Today, the legacy of the Tulsa Race Massacre continues to resonate, reminding us of the importance of remembrance in fostering healing and promoting justice. Through education and dialogue, we can honor the victims and strive towards a more equitable future, learning from the past to prevent such atrocities from occurring again. The resilience of communities like Greenwood illustrates the power of hope, dignity, and the ongoing struggle for equality, shedding light on the imperative to confront our history honestly and compassionately. So, as we reflect on this tragic event, it is crucial to foster understanding and empathy, creating spaces for dialogue that recognize the complexities of our shared history. By doing so, we not only pay tribute to those who lost their lives and their businesses, but also those who continue to fight for justice and equity in our society today. The stories from Greenwood deserve to be told and cherished, standing as a powerful testament to the tenacity of the human spirit against overwhelming odds. In the late 19th century, a chapter of history unfolded that left a scar on humanity and whose ramifications echo to this day. This story revolves around the Congo Free State, a project of King Leopold II of Belgium, who claimed the territory as his private estate. Many people are familiar with colonialism's overall impact, but the specific atrocities committed in the Congo Free State often fade into the background, overshadowed by larger narratives. Imagine a vast land rich in natural resources, teeming with life and culture. The Congo was a place where rivers flowed with sustenance, and communities thrived in harmony with the environment. However, beneath its surface lay a wealth of rubber, ivory, and minerals, which attracted the greedy eyes of European powers. King Leopold II, driven by a desire for wealth and prestige, set his sights on this vast territory. Under the guise of bringing civilization and enlightenment, Leopold established a regime that was anything but benevolent. His administration was characterized by brutal exploitation and unimaginable cruelty. To extract rubber from the trees, harsh quotas were imposed on the local population, and failure to meet these quotas led to severe consequences. Villagers were subject to violence, intimidation, and, in many cases, death at the hands of the force publique, a military force created to enforce Leopold's will. Reports from travelers and missionaries who ventured into the region painted a bleak picture of life under Leopold's rule. They spoke of villages depopulated by violence, families torn apart, and children orphaned as their parents fell victim to brutal punishments. Women faced unspeakable horrors, often subjected to violence as a means of control. The use of severed hands as trophies became a grotesque symbol of the regime's brutality. A hand would be severed if a villager did not meet the rubber quota, serving as a chilling reminder of the consequences of defiance. The world turned a blind eye for years, and the atrocities continued unchecked. Estimates suggest that millions of Congolese people lost their lives during this dark era, their suffering largely unnoticed outside the region. It was only much later, as reports began to trickle back to Europe and the United States, that the horrifying extent of Leopold's regime came to light. Activists and humanitarians began to speak out, but the damage was already done, leaving behind a legacy of pain and suffering. Support for Leopold began to dwindle as more became aware of the atrocities. In 1908, under pressure from public outcry and changing political winds, the Belgian government finally took control of the Congo, dissolving Leopold's personal ownership. But the impact of his regime did not simply vanish. The social fabric of Congolese society had been irrevocably altered. Communities that had once thrived found themselves fractured, grappling with the consequences of violence and exploitation. The aftermath of the Congo Free State was profound. Infrastructures were left in ruins, traditional ways of life disrupted, and an economy built on exploitation emerged. Rubber and ivory had brought profit, but at what cost? The Congolese people had suffered immensely, and the scars left by colonial exploitation ran deep. Despite the end of Leopold's personal rule, the systemic issues persisted. Economic exploitation continued under Belgian colonial rule, as new systems of oppression replaced the old. Today, the legacy of the Congo Free State remains relevant as it serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human greed and inhumanity. The stories of those who suffered deserve attention, not to dwell in the past, but to learn from it. The importance of acknowledging this dark chapter of history becomes evident as we navigate contemporary discussions on colonialism, justice, and human rights. Understanding the atrocities committed during this period is crucial for recognizing the ongoing struggles faced by many nations that experienced colonial rule. Conversations around reparations and accountability continue to emerge as societies grapple with underlying inequities that can be traced back to such dark periods in history. The world today shares a responsibility to honor the memory of the millions who suffered in the Congo Free State, to amplify the voices of those impacted, and to foster a commitment toward justice and equality. By bringing these stories to light, we can contribute to a more compassionate world that acknowledges the pain of the past while striving for a better future. We must remember and reflect so as not to repeat the mistakes of history and to ensure every voice in every corner of the world is valued and heard. The Partition of India in 1947 stands as a significant and transformative event in the history of South Asia. It marked the end of British colonial rule and the emergence of two independent nations, India and Pakistan. However, the process was not simply a transition to freedom. It was marred by unprecedented levels of mass migration and violence, affecting millions of lives. Surprisingly, this monumental upheaval often remains underexplored outside of South Asia, despite its profound implications. At the core of this historical moment was the growing rift between Hindu and Muslim communities in British India. The British, in their efforts to maintain control, exploited existing divisions, fostering a sense of nationalism among religious lines. As the demand for independence strengthened, so did the call for separate states based on religious identity. The All India Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, advocated for a separate nation for Muslims, presenting Pakistan as a rightful solution to protect their political and religious identity. As the date for independence approached, the British hastily enacted the plan for partition. On the eve of August 15, 1947, British India was divided into two separate entities, a predominantly Hindu India and a predominantly Muslim Pakistan. This arbitrary division created chaos as millions of people found themselves on the wrong side of a newly drawn border. Families were torn apart, and entire communities faced displacement. The movement across borders was not a simple migration. It was a tumultuous journey characterized by violence and horror. Estimates suggest that around 10 to 15 million people crossed borders, seeking refuge in their newly designated countries. The journey was perilous, filled with uncertainty and fear. Train stations became sites of tragedy, where crowds of refugees sought passage, often facing overcrowding, starvation, and worse, violence from those who saw them as outsiders. The violence during partition was staggering. Thousands of lives were lost in communal riots as neighbors turned against one another. Muslims, Sikhs, and Hindus, who had lived peacefully for centuries, suddenly found themselves engulfed in bloodshed. Women specifically were targeted, facing horrific acts of violence, abduction, and sexual assault. The impact left scars that would take generations to heal. This grim chapter of history was not merely confined to the borders of India and Pakistan. It rippled through neighboring regions, affecting communities in East and West Bengal and even as far as Kashmir. The narratives of suffering were often personal, with families recounting tales of loss, fear, and the challenges of starting anew. The trauma of these events shaped collective memories, which continue to resonate in the socio-political fabric of these nations. In the years following the partition, both countries faced the daunting task of nation-building. Leaders were compelled to address the immense challenges that emerged in the wake of such drastic demographic changes. Resettling refugees, managing communal tensions, and establishing a sense of national identity became pivotal. However, the ghosts of partition lingered, leading to lingering hostilities and conflicts that echo to this day. Despite its significance, the partition is sometimes overshadowed by other less tumultuous aspects within the narrative of independence. Historical accounts sometimes focus heavily on the political maneuvers of prominent leaders, thus neglecting the human aspects of this catastrophe. It is essential to acknowledge the lived experiences of millions whose lives were irreversibly altered during this time. Their stories are crucial for understanding the broader historical context and the enduring legacy of partition. Furthermore, education about the partition of India is limited outside South Asia, leaving many unaware of its complexities and implications. Recognizing this part of history fosters a greater understanding of present-day issues, such as communal strife and identity crises in the region. Discussions surrounding partition offer valuable insights into the dangers of nationalism fueled by divisions, a lesson that resonates globally even today. In recent years, there has been a renewed interest in discussing partition, with historians, writers, and filmmakers seeking to document the narratives of those who lived through it. Personal accounts, literature, and cinematic representations attempt to capture the essence of this deeply traumatic event. Through storytelling, there is hope for reconciliation, understanding, and an exploration of shared humanity amidst a painful past. In summary, the partition of India in 1947 represents not just a political shift, but a profound social upheaval that reshaped millions of lives. The mass migration and violence connected to this event deserve broader recognition and understanding. Engaging with these narratives not only honors those who suffered, but also offers critical lessons on community, identity, and the intricate connections between history and contemporary society. Through education and storytelling, we can aim to understand and empathize with the complex realities that emerged from this pivotal moment in history. The Japanese-American internment during World War II represents a significant and complex chapter in American history, one that is often overlooked in educational settings. This event unfolded against the backdrop of a war that shaped the course of the 20th century, but its implications stretch far beyond the battlefield. The internment began after the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. In the wake of this unprecedented attack, which thrust the United States into World War II, fears escalated about national security. Government officials and segments of the public expressed concerns that individuals of Japanese ancestry could pose a threat to the nation. This mentality was fueled by long-standing racial prejudices and suspicion stemming from earlier immigration waves and cultural misunderstanding. In February 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which allowed military commanders to designate areas from which individuals could be excluded. This led to the establishment of internment camps for Japanese Americans, primarily on the West Coast. Families were uprooted from their homes, often with only a few days' notice. They were forced to leave behind businesses, possessions, and communities, leading to emotional distress and financial ruin. The internment experience was deeply dehumanizing. Japanese American families were relocated to remote camps, surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by armed soldiers. Living conditions were harsh, with inadequate facilities and limited privacy. In these camps, individuals faced uncertain futures and loss of dignity, yet they navigated daily life with resilience, creating makeshift communities. Education continued within the camps as internees sought to maintain some semblance of normalcy despite their circumstances. Children attended school, while adults found ways to contribute. Some even organized cultural activities to preserve their heritage and foster a sense of identity amidst confinement. However, they faced numerous challenges, including restrictions on their movements and the constant reminder of their status as unjustly detained citizens. As the war drew on, the loyalty and patriotism of many Japanese Americans came into question, which was particularly evident when some internees enlisted in the U.S. military. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team, comprised mostly of Japanese American soldiers, became one of the most decorated units in American history. Their bravery in combat served to challenge the stereotype of disloyalty that had led to their internment. Yet even after their service, many returning veterans faced the same prejudice and discrimination as before. In the years following the war, the Japanese American community faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives. Many families returned to find their homes and businesses had been lost or taken over. The long-term psychological effects of internment left scars that would take generations to heal. The turbulent journey of immigrants and their descendants who faced such injustices speaks to the broader themes of civil rights and social justice. In the decades that followed, efforts to address the injustices of internment gained momentum. Activists, historians, and former internees began advocating for recognition and restitution. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, which acknowledged the wrongs committed against Japanese Americans. This landmark legislation offered a formal apology and financial compensation to surviving internees, symbolizing a step toward reconciliation. Today, the internment of Japanese Americans serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of civil liberties in times of crisis. It prompts important discussions about race, identity, and the responsibilities society holds to protect individual rights. The legacy of internment endures, highlighting the necessity of education and remembrance to ensure such events are never repeated. In learning about this chapter of history, diverse perspectives come to light, inviting dialogue about inclusivity and understanding. Visitors to historical sites, such as Manzanar National Historic Site in California and the Minidoka National Historic Site in Idaho, can engage with this past, experiencing the stories and struggles of those who lived through it. Through exhibits, survivor testimonies, and educational programs, these sites provide invaluable resources for understanding the ramifications of such policies and the resilience of the human spirit. Confronting the realities of Japanese American internment encourages reflection on current issues of racial discrimination and marginalization. As society continues to confront challenges regarding civil liberties, it is crucial to remember and learn from past mistakes, striving to create a future rooted in justice and equality. This history is not just a story of a specific group, but a collective narrative that shapes the understanding of American identity today. Embracing this aspect of history fosters greater empathy and social responsibility, reminding us that history is alive and always relevant. The lessons learned from the internment experience are vital in building a country where diversity is celebrated and individual rights are safeguarded. Through continued education, open dialogues, and memorialization of this pivotal chapter, society can honor the resilience of those who endured Japanese-American internment while ensuring a more inclusive future for all. In the aftermath of World War II, a pivotal moment in history unfolded, largely behind the scenes, and often omitted from mainstream education. This moment is known as Operation Paperclip. It was a covert program initiated by the United States government aimed at harnessing the expertise of German scientists, engineers, and technicians who had been involved in developing advanced technology during the war. At its core, Operation Paperclip represented a significant turning point in the intersection of science, politics, and ethics. As the dust settled from the war, the landscape of post-war Europe was marked by tension and uncertainty. The Cold War was on the horizon, and both the United States and the Soviet Union were in a race to secure technological and military superiority. The Americans recognized that a wealth of knowledge and expertise existed among the ranks of former German scientists, some of whom had made groundbreaking contributions to fields such as aerodynamics, rocketry, and medicine. Thus, the decision was made to bring these individuals to the United States. The name Operation Paperclip itself is derived from the paperclips that were used to attach identifying documents to the personnel files of these scientists. Among the notable figures who became part of this operation was Wernher von Braun, who played a crucial role in developing rocket technology. Von Braun had originally worked for Nazi Germany on the V-2 rocket program, but his expertise was soon redirected toward the American space program. His contributions would later prove instrumental in landing humans on the moon. However, this operation was not without controversy. Many of the scientists recruited under Operation Paperclip had been members of the Nazi Party. Critics argue that the U.S. government's willingness to overlook their past affiliations raises important ethical questions. Did the ends justify the means? The Cold War environment often prioritized scientific advancement and military advantage over the moral implications of associating with individuals who had worked for a regime responsible for horrific war crimes. Another prominent figure brought to the United States through Operation Paperclip was Kurt Debus, who became the director of NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Debus and others like him played a vital role in shaping the future of American space exploration. They introduced innovations that transformed the space race, contributing to everything from satellite technology to crewed missions beyond Earth's atmosphere. The legacy of their work continues to influence space exploration today. Operation Paperclip also made significant inroads into various scientific fields, including medicine and chemical engineering. Some scientists worked on projects related to the development of pharmaceuticals and medical technologies. The knowledge they brought with them helped to advance American industries and improve public health. However, the association with individuals linked to a regime that committed egregious human rights violations often cast a shadow over these achievements. The program also had implications beyond individual scientists. It contributed to the establishment of numerous research institutions and defense projects across the United States, embedding former Nazi scientists within the military-industrial complex. This integration played a role in the U.S. emerging as a global leader in technological advancements during the latter half of the 20th century. As the years passed, Operation Paperclip revealed itself not just as a recruitment program, but also as a complex narrative of morality and necessity. The dilemma of dealing with individuals who had once contributed to a regime of terror highlighted the often murky waters of national interest. Many Americans were unaware of the true extent of this operation and the individuals involved, as it was overshadowed by the broader narrative of World War II and its aftermath. In more recent years, historians and researchers have shed light on Operation Paperclip, revealing the intricate web of scientific collaboration and ethical challenges that accompanied this initiative. Books, documentaries, and scholarly articles have emerged that examine the far-reaching consequences of this secret program, addressing both the accomplishments and the moral compromises it entailed. Through Operation Paperclip, the United States not only secured access to advanced technology, but also engaged in a unique chapter of scientific history that reflected the complex interplay of ambition, morality, and innovation. The influence of these scientists extended beyond military applications and laid the groundwork for advancements in space exploration, engineering, and health sciences that would shape the modern world. In summation, the legacy of Operation Paperclip is a tale of ambition, innovation, and moral ambiguity, providing a fascinating glimpse into how the pursuit of knowledge and progress can sometimes clash with ethical consideration. The scientists brought to America under this program significantly impacted numerous fields, emphasizing the dual nature of invention, where remarkable achievements often come intertwined with complicated histories. This chapter of history serves as a reminder of the intricate balance between scientific advancement and the ethical responsibilities that come with it. By unraveling the complexities of Operation Paperclip, we can appreciate the nuances of our shared past and recognize the ongoing implications of decisions made in times of crisis. In the 1980s, the world was witnessing a complex interplay of politics, power, and intrigue, particularly in relation to U.S. foreign policy in Latin America. One of the most significant, yet often underexplored events from this period is the Iran-Contra Affair. This scandal was not merely a political misstep. It echoed with reverberations that would shape both American politics and international relations for years to come. To understand the Iran-Contra Affair, we must first explore its historical context. During the early 1980s, the United States was embroiled in the Cold War, a period defined by the struggle between capitalist and communist ideologies. Central America became a focal point in this ideological battle, particularly in countries like Nicaragua, where the Sandinista government, inspired by Marxist principles, had come to power after overthrowing Somoza's Somoza family dictatorship. The U.S. government, under President Ronald Reagan, viewed the rise of the Sandinistas as a direct threat to democracy and American interests in the region. In response, America backed the Contras, a rebel group seeking to overthrow the Sandinista regime. However, Congress, wary of a lengthy and costly conflict, passed a Boland Amendment in 1984. This legislation prohibited further U.S. military assistance to the Contras, creating a significant obstacle for the Reagan administration. Enter a twist in the narrative. At the same time, Iran was embroiled in its own turmoil, navigating the aftermath of the 1979 Islamic Revolution and facing a grinding war with Iraq. Somewhere in the midst of this geopolitical tangle, the U.S. decided to pursue a covert strategy. Officials believed that if they could sell arms to Iran, a country they had previously branded as a terrorist state, they could foster better relations and gain leverage. The idea was that the revenue generated from these arms sales could then be funneled to the Contras, thus circumventing the constraints imposed by Congress. In 1985, the first arms were sold, and this secret collaboration with Iran began to take root. Although the initial intentions were framed as pragmatic, this decision opened a Pandora's box of ethical concerns and legal challenges. It raised questions about the extent to which the executive branch could operate outside the bounds of congressional oversight. The sales were, in essence, an act of defiance against the very laws put in place by Congress. As revelations about the Iran-Contra affair began to surface, they sparked a national firestorm. Investigative journalists played a pivotal role in uncovering the truth, bringing to light the covert activities that had taken place. The scandal ultimately led to a series of congressional hearings, which captivated the American public and not only illuminated the actions of government officials, but also called into question the moral compass guiding U.S. foreign policy. Central figures emerged during these investigations, including Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, who became the face of the affair and dramatically defended his actions, expressing a belief that he was acting in the best interest of the nation. This portrayal resonated with many, as it highlighted the complex and often murky nature of national security issues. The consequences of the Iran-Contra Affair were manifold. Several officials faced criminal charges, and though many were ultimately pardoned by President George H.W. Bush, the affair deeply scarred the public's trust in government. It showcased the extent to which political leaders might go in pursuit of their objectives, even when faced with overwhelming legal and ethical opposition. Interestingly, the fallout from the Iran-Contra Affair extended beyond American borders. It affected U.S. relations with countries in the Middle East and Latin America, intertwining their destinies with America's Cold War posture. Across the globe, leaders were compelled to reassess their diplomatic strategies and alliances in light of the affair, which broadcasted a message about the lengths to which the U.S. would go to safeguard its interests. The Iran-Contra Affair also underscored the complexities of modern warfare and interventionist policies. Policymakers grappled with the realization that warfare was not limited to traditional battles and troops on the ground. Instead, it involved covert operations, shadowy deals, and nuanced relationships that defied easy categorization. Reflecting on the Iran-Contra Affair, it becomes clear that this episode serves as a cautionary tale. It emphasizes the importance of transparency, accountability, and the necessity for checks and balances in government. In the throes of geopolitical strategies, it is easy to lose sight of the ethical implications entangled within actions taken in the name of national security. The legacy of the Iran-Contra Affair remains relevant today. As new conflicts emerge and the face of international diplomacy continuously evolves, lessons from the past become invaluable. Understanding the intricacies of such historical events enriches our comprehension of current affairs and empowers us to analyze the decisions made by leaders in today's turbulent landscape. In conclusion, the Iran-Contra Affair is more than merely a chapter in U.S. history. It is a reflection of the ongoing struggle to balance power, ethics, and the quest for stability in a complex world. As we continue to engage with global issues, recalling these events encourages a reflection on the principles guiding our decisions and reminds us of the impact those decisions can have on future generations. Through such reflections, a deeper understanding of the delicate dance of international politics can be achieved, illuminating a path forward that prioritizes not just interests, but also integrity and moral responsibility. In the history of American housing policy, few practices have had a more profound impact on communities and individuals than redlining. This term refers to the systematic denial of various financial services to residents of certain areas based largely on their racial or ethnic background. The roots of redlining stretch deep into the early 20th century, but were notably codified during the 1930s with the establishment of the Homeowners Loan Corporation and the Federal Housing Administration. These governmental organizations aim to make homeownership more attainable for Americans, but inadvertently reinforced racial segregation through their practices. Imagine, if you will, the process of scoring neighborhoods. Banks and insurance companies, influenced by government guidelines, created maps that outlined which communities were deemed safe investments and which were not. These maps often used red ink to highlight areas predominantly occupied by black residents, effectively labeling them as high risk or undesirable. The implications of this practice were severe and long-lasting, deeply affecting the opportunities available to generations of Black Americans. Consider the impact on one family searching for a home. They might have diligently saved for a down payment, researched neighborhoods, and found an ideal home in what they believed to be a welcoming community. Yet, if that neighborhood was classified as high risk due to its racial composition, their dreams could be dashed before they truly began. Banks often denied loans based on these discriminatory practices, pushing families into less desirable areas or forcing them to rent instead of buy. This practice not only affected the immediate desires for homeownership, but also deprived entire communities of the wealth and stability that come with it. As the decades passed, the consequences of redlining extended far beyond individual families. Entire neighborhoods were deprived of investment and development. Homes in redlined areas often fell into disrepair, decreasing in value, while the investments in safe neighborhoods led to thriving, well-maintained communities. This pattern contributed to a widening socio-economic gap that persists to this day. Residents of redlined neighborhoods faced higher unemployment rates, lower educational opportunities, and fewer resources that could have paved the way for economic mobility. Despite the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which aimed to eliminate discrimination in housing, the legacy of redlining has had lasting repercussions. Many of the patterns established by redlining remain evident in urban planning and housing policies even decades later. Segregation has not just persisted, it has evolved. The residential choices of many Americans today can often be traced back to the restrictive practices of decades prior. To understand the full extent of the ramifications, one must consider the relationship between wealth accumulation and homeownership. The vast majority of American families build their wealth through their homes. When certain groups are systematically excluded from this process, the effects ripple through generations. Historically, white families have been able to claim and grow wealth tied to home equity, while black families, historically impacted by redlining, have struggled to do the same. These disparities create cycles of poverty that can feel insurmountable, as opportunities for future generations are stunted. Additionally, the ramifications of redlining go beyond just economic inequity. They weave their way into the fabric of social and educational divides. Schools, funded significantly by local property taxes, often receive more funding in affluent neighborhoods. When neighborhoods are segregated along racial and economic lines, schools in these areas struggle to provide the same level of resources, effectively placing a significant barrier in front of the education of children growing up in historically redlined areas. Despite the profound impact that the roots of redlining have had on American society, it remains under-discussed in many educational settings. The history of housing discrimination is often treated as a bygone issue, rather than a critical component of understanding ongoing racial disparities. To foster a more equitable society, there needs to be a commitment to educating the public about the historical context of redlining, its direct consequences on community structures, and the ongoing efforts needed to address these inequalities. In recent years, there have been movements toward recognition and remediation. Organizations and activists are working to highlight and rectify the enduring inequalities stemming from redlining practices. Efforts include advocating for fair housing policies, supporting community development programs, and raising awareness about the lingering impact of historical injustices. Understanding these past injustices is crucial not just for creating better policies today, but for ensuring that history does not repeat itself. In confronting the realities of redlining, one comes to appreciate that understanding America's housing policy is about more than just economics. It is about people and the lives they lead, the dreams they hold, and the barriers they face. The legacy of redlining is interwoven into the American narrative, and acknowledging its truth is the first step toward a more equitable future for all. By expanding our knowledge of these issues, we can inspire change that addresses the inequalities created and sustained by generations of systemic discrimination. This narrative must be woven into the fabric of education, providing future generations with the knowledge and tools to craft a more inclusive society. In the simmering summer of 1923, the small town of Rosewood, Florida, was home to a thriving Black community characterized by success, resilience, and a deep sense of pride. Founded in the late 1800s, Rosewood became a symbol of opportunity for its residents who were engaged in various trades, owned businesses, and participated in a vibrant social life. Its progress and prosperity were testaments to the strength and determination of its people, showcasing a vibrant African-American culture against the backdrop of a society that was still riddled with racial tensions and inequalities. However, this prosperity was overshadowed by the deep-seated racial animosities that permeated much of the southern United States. In early January of 1923, an incident occurred that would lead to catastrophic consequences for the community. A white woman claimed surfaced that she had been assaulted by a Black man, igniting outrage and fueling racial tension. This incident, marked by unconfirmed allegations, sparked an aggressive response from white residents in nearby towns who sought retribution for what they believed to be an affront against their community. The ensuing violence reached a fever pitch as a mob of white residents descended upon Rosewood with an intent that was tragically clear. They sought to assert dominance and intimidate the residents with a show of force. This attack, characterized by its brutality, marked a horrific chapter in American history. The mob destroyed homes, set fire to businesses, and instilled fear in the hearts of those living in Rosewood. Survivors recounted the terror of that night, with people fleeing for their lives as their community was engulfed in flames. This brutal act was not an isolated incident, but a part of a broader pattern of racial violence that permeated the American South during this era. Many African American communities experienced similar fates, as acts of terror would often go unpunished, leaving survivors to carry the weight of loss and trauma. The Rosewood Massacre, while significant in its magnitude, remains one of the lesser-known events in American history. It is a reflection of the systemic racism that persisted and the lengths to which individuals went to protect their sense of superiority. In the wake of the massacre, many residents sought refuge elsewhere, scattered, and never returned to the land they once called home. The community that had flourished was left in ruins, a silence settling over a place that had once buzzed with life. The stories and experiences of those who lived through the ordeal became quieter over time, often overshadowed by larger historical events. The Rosewood Massacre serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of remembering all facets of our history, especially those that are often glossed over in textbooks. Education plays a crucial role in understanding the complex fabric of American society, particularly in acknowledging the struggles of marginalized communities. The voices of Rosewood and its residents call for recognition, demanding that their narrative be included in the broader tapestry of American history. In the years that followed, the events of Rosewood faded further from public consciousness, overshadowed by other historical events. Yet, the resolve of the survivors and the descendants of those who once lived in the community bore witness to a painful legacy. Advocacy for their story continued, as local activists and historians sought to ensure that the memories of the lives lost and the homes destroyed were not forgotten. Discussion of the massacre re-emerged over the years, bringing attention to the issues of racial violence and the ongoing fight for justice and equality. The Rosewood legacy became a focal point for dialogues surrounding systemic racism and the need for reparative history. Memorials and local initiatives aimed at preserving the history and educating future generations about the tragedy became vital components in recognizing the importance of storytelling in the healing process. In recent years, efforts have expanded to highlight the community's history and advocate for justice for the descendants of those impacted by the events of 1923. The Rosewood story is not just one of tragedy, but also of resilience and a fundamental call to remember the past so that it can inform our present and future. By sharing these narratives, we embrace the responsibility of acknowledging the complexities of our history and fostering dialogues that can drive understanding and healing. Indeed, the story of Rosewood is woven into the larger narrative of America, reflecting a profound chapter that must be told. It reminds us that every community has a unique history, rich with experiences that shape the cultural landscape. The preservation of these stories stands as a testimony to perseverance amidst adversity and a commitment to ensure that the lessons of the past shape a more equitable future. Understanding Rosewood is not merely an act of remembrance. It is a crucial step toward confronting and addressing the ongoing realities of racial inequality in our society today. As we reflect on the past, we must also embrace the responsibility to foster a world where history's lessons help us build a more inclusive and understanding society for generations to come. The Opium Wars were a pivotal series of conflicts in the mid-19th century that significantly altered the course of history, particularly between China and Britain. This often overlooked chapter not only reveals the complexities of colonialism and international trade, but also highlights the intricate dynamics of power, economy, and societal impacts on both sides. To understand these wars, one must first consider the backdrop of trade between Britain and China. In the early 19th century, China was known for its rich culture, advanced civilization, and a vast array of goods that captivated the world, especially tea, silk, and porcelain. The British Empire found itself in a trade imbalance. The demand for Chinese products far outstripped the supply of British goods that appealed to Chinese consumers. Consequently, Britain sought a way to correct this imbalance, leading them to turn to opium. Opium, derived from the poppy plant, was initially used for medicinal purposes. However, as it gained popularity, it became a recreational drug, and the British East India Company seized the opportunity to capitalize on this burgeoning market. They began cultivating opium in India and exporting it to China in large quantities. By the early 19th century, opium addiction had gripped a significant portion of the Chinese population, leading to widespread social and economic degradation. Estimates suggest that by the 1830s, approximately 12 million Chinese people were addicted to opium. This situation prompted the Chinese government to act. In 1838, Emperor Daoguang appointed Lin Zexu as the imperial commissioner to halt the opium trade and address this critical issue. Lin Zexu took drastic measures by imposing a stringent ban on opium. He ordered the confiscation and destruction of over 1,000 tons of opium in a dramatic display of resistance against British trade practices. This act, rather than curtailing the trade, served to ignite tensions between China and Britain. The British, outraged by the loss of their lucrative opium market, responded with military force. In 1839, the First Opium War erupted, marking the beginning of a conflict that would expose the vulnerabilities of the Qing dynasty. British military superiority bolstered by advanced weaponry and naval prowess, overwhelmed Chinese forces. The war concluded in 1842 with the Treaty of Nanking, which forced China to cede Hong Kong to Britain, open several ports to British trade, and grant extraterritorial rights to British citizens. The ramifications of the First Opium War extended beyond territorial losses. The treaty system that emerged favored Western powers at the expense of Chinese sovereignty, igniting resentment and laying the groundwork for future conflicts. Many historians argue that this marked the beginning of the century of humiliation for China, where it faced a series of invasions and concessions to foreign powers. However, the story did not end there. Following this initial conflict, the Second Opium War broke out in 1856 and continued until 1860. Once again, Britain, alongside France, sought to expand their interests in China. This war resulted in further humiliating treaties, opening up more ports, allowing foreign envoys in Beijing, and legalizing the opium trade. The conflict deepened China's socio-political troubles, leading to widespread discontent among the populace. These wars not only reshaped the geopolitical landscape in Asia, but also had lasting effects on British society. The influx of wealth from the opium trade fueled industrial growth back in Britain, contributing to the prosperity of the Victorian era. However, this prosperity came at a staggering human cost. The moral implications of profiting from addiction and societal decay were profound, causing debates that lingered in British society even today. Moreover, the Opium Wars catalyzed significant changes within China. The perception of foreign powers shifted dramatically. Where once the Qing dynasty had seen itself as the center of civilization, the defeats exposed its weaknesses, leading to calls for reform and modernization. The infamy of the Opium Wars became a rallying point for Chinese nationalism and reform movements that would arise later, as individuals sought to resist foreign encroachment and push for a stronger, more unified China. Today, the lessons of the Opium Wars hold relevance far beyond their historical context. They offer insight into the complexities of globalization, the ethics of trade, and the stark realities of colonialism. In understanding this history, we can appreciate how deeply intertwined the threads of international relations and human experiences are, demonstrating the power dynamics that shape the world we inhabit today. Ultimately, the Opium Wars serve as a reminder of the enduring consequences of exploitation and the importance of viewing history through multiple perspectives. They compel us to reflect on our values regarding morality and trade, the rights of nations, and how histories are written and remembered. By acknowledging all sides of this narrative, we can foster a more nuanced understanding of our world and the legacies we continue to navigate. In the early 20th century, Tulsa, Oklahoma was home to Greenwood, a vibrant and prosperous neighborhood often referred to as Black Wall Street. This community became a beacon of African American success, thriving economically and culturally during a time of widespread racial segregation and discrimination. Despite the oppressive societal climate, Greenwood embodied the resilience and entrepreneurial spirit of its residents. The economic prosperity of Black Wall Street was remarkable. The area housed numerous African American-owned businesses, ranging from barbershops and beauty salons to hotels and movie theaters. These establishments catered to the Black community, providing essential services and products, while fostering a sense of pride and identity. At its peak, Greenwood was a bustling hub where families thrived, and the community's wealth was visible in its architecture and the quality of life enjoyed by its residents. Greenwood's success can be attributed to a number of factors. After the establishment of Jim Crow laws, many African Americans were pushed to create their own opportunities. Tulsa's black residents began opening businesses, which not only served their community, but also provided employment opportunities. This entrepreneurial spirit was supported by a network of mutual aid societies and community organizations that promoted economic independence. The culmination of this unique period in history came in the early 1920s, as Grenwood was home to about 10,000 residents, with more than 300 black-owned businesses lining its streets. Residents prided themselves on their self-sufficiency, and the area became a model of economic achievement. The community was vibrant, with social events and cultural celebrations reflecting the richness of black life. However, this prosperity came to a tragic halt in May 1921, following an incident involving a young black man and a young white woman. Tensions escalated rapidly. Rumors spread, fueling racial hysteria. On May 31st, a mob of white residents began to gather, armed with rifles and shotguns, converging on Grenwood. The ensuing violence lasted for 2 days, leading to devastating destruction. Homes, businesses, and schools were burned down, and the local economy suffered a direct blow. It is estimated that over 1,000 people were killed, and thousands more were left homeless. The destruction of Black Wall Street wasn't just an assault on property. It was an outright assault on the aspirations and dignity of an entire community. After the massacre, the recovery was painfully slow. The state and local authorities offered little assistance, and many black citizens chose to leave the city altogether. Those who remained worked hard to rebuild. Yet, the scars left by the tragedy ran deep, not only in Tulsa, but across the nation. In the decades following the destruction, the story of Black Wall Street was often omitted from histories and textbooks, a painful chapter that many sought to forget. This erasure is significant not only because of the loss of lives and livelihoods, but also because it represents a broader struggle for recognition and justice faced by African Americans throughout history. In recent years, the narrative surrounding Black Wall Street is beginning to change, with greater recognition of the achievements of Grenwood and the tragic events that dismantled it. Memorials, community organizations, and educational initiatives are working to ensure that this story is told, honoring those who were lost and celebrating the resilient spirit of a community that sought to uplift itself against overwhelming odds. Today, a renewed interest in the history of Black Wall Street has sparked discussions on economic empowerment, racial justice, and community rebuilding. These conversations are essential as they not only pay tribute to the history of Grenwood but also inspire current and future generations to learn from the past and engage with the present. As we reflect on the legacy of Black Wall Street, it is crucial to acknowledge the impact of systemic discrimination and the lasting effects it has on communities. By examining this history, we gain insights into the importance of economic self-determination and cultural identity. The story of Black Wall Street serves as a reminder of the potential for achievement in the face of adversity and the role that community plays in fostering growth and resilience. The memory of Black Wall Street lives on, reminding us of the incredible accomplishments that can arise from unity, hard work, and determination. It encourages us to honor the past while working toward a more equitable future for all. Black Wall Street is not just a tale of destruction, it is also a story of strength, inspiration, and an enduring hope that continues to resonate today. During World War II, a remarkable and unconventional unit known as the Ghost Army emerged in the theater of war, showcasing creativity and ingenuity in military strategy. This American unit, officially named the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, was established to mislead and confuse the enemy through deception. The Ghost Army's operations were so unique and effective that they could be likened to a live performance art project on the battlefield, often overlooked in traditional historical accounts. The Ghost Army was composed of approximately 11,100 soldiers, including artists, designers, sound engineers, and soldiers trained in deception techniques. This diverse group brought together a wide range of skills that would play a critical role in their mission. Their primary goal was to create illusions that would mislead the enemy into making incorrect assessments of American troop strength and positioning. One of the most famous and eye-catching tactics employed by the Ghost Army involved the use of inflatable tanks. These enormous rubber balloons were inflated to resemble real armored vehicles. When positioned strategically on the front lines, they created the illusion of a robust armored division ready for combat. These inflatable tanks were not merely decorative. They were carefully crafted to look convincingly realistic. The soldiers would often use wooden frames and weighted ends to ensure stability in unpredictable weather conditions. In addition to inflatable tanks, the Ghost Army utilized inflatable planes, trucks, and artillery pieces, further embellishing their deceptions. These mock setups provided the necessary coverage for real troop movements, allowing genuine military operations to take place without revealing their true locations. Imagine seeing an entire division of armored vehicles in a location where, in reality, only a handful of troops were stationed. This kind of deception was critical in disorienting enemy forces and creating strategic advantages. Sound was another crucial component in the Ghost Army's repertoire. Using loudspeakers, the unit could simulate the sounds of tanks moving and troops marching. This auditory deception supplemented their visual tactics, creating a multisensory experience designed to mislead the enemy. The sound engineers would record genuine battlefield sounds, which they could then play at opportune moments to instill fear and uncertainty in the opposition. Picture the bewilderment of enemy soldiers listening to the sounds of an approaching army when, in actuality, they were facing a creative illusion. The Ghost Army's operations were not limited to physical deception. They also conducted psychological warfare. By crafting a meticulous plan of disinformation, they could manipulate the enemy's perception, causing them to overestimate the American forces' presence. The unit executed fake radio transmissions that suggested troop movements, further intensifying the chaos and confusion among enemy lines. It was a game of cat and mouse, where the Ghost Army constantly adapted to the enemy's expectations while keeping them off balance. One notable mission occurred during the Allied invasion of France in 1944. As troops prepared to land on the beaches of Normandy, the Ghost Army staged an elaborate deception in the lead-up to the assault. They set up inflatable tanks and equipment across the region to mislead German intelligence. The operation was so convincing that the Germans redirected their resources, making it easier for the Allied forces to execute their actual plans successfully. The work of the Ghost Army goes beyond the battlefield. It highlights the importance of creativity in times of conflict. While traditional military might is indispensable, the success of this unit exemplifies how art and imagination can play pivotal roles in strategy. Their story encourages us to reconsider the narratives we've learned, emphasizing that creativity and collaboration can lead to extraordinary outcomes. After the war, the Ghost Army's contributions remained classified for many years. Only recently has the story come to light, showcasing the bravery and cleverness of a unit that relied on deception to achieve significant victory. Their unique approach to warfare reminds us of the power of unconventional methods and forces us to expand our understanding of military history beyond standard accounts. Reflecting on the Ghost Army, we are reminded of the tremendous potential for innovation in any field, be it art, science, or leadership. The lessons learned from their story reveal that sometimes thinking outside the box can yield remarkable results, particularly under challenging circumstances. The Ghost Army's legacy continues to inspire those who believe in the importance of creativity and innovation when faced with adversity. In a world often focused on brute force, the tale of the Ghost Army is a testament to the effectiveness of wit and imagination. Acknowledging such stories enriches our understanding of history and serves as a reminder that every contribution matters, regardless of whether it fits the conventional mold. The Ghost Army may have relied on deception, but their actual impact was genuine and lasting, demonstrating that cunning can be just as powerful as any weapon. The Mau Uprising stands as a significant yet often overlooked chapter in the colonial history of Kenya. This rebellion, which took place from 1952 to 1960, was primarily a response to the harsh realities and injustices of British colonial rule. During this period, a growing discontent simmered among the Kikuyu people, who felt increasingly alienated from their land and livelihoods due to colonial policies. Their struggle for freedom and justice became a rallying point for many, igniting a movement that would have lasting implications for Kenya and the broader African continent. The British forces had established a colonial regime that enforced racial segregation and prioritized the interests of European settlers over the indigenous populations. The Kikuyu, who were the largest ethnic group in Kenya, faced land dispossession through various means. These included government policies that transferred fertile land to white settlers while relegating the Kikuyu to less productive regions. This disenfranchisement fueled anger and a desire for reclaiming their rights and reclaiming their land. As the socio-political tensions escalated, the Mau Mau emerged as a militant movement. Members of this group, primarily young Kikuyu men and women, made a solemn vow to resist British rule through any means necessary. They pledged to fight for their land, freedom, and the rights of their people. The name Mau Mau itself has various interpretations, often associated with the Kikuyu expression for a promise of loyalty and commitment to the struggle. The uprising began to take shape in a series of violent confrontations against British authorities and the white settlers. These were marked by guerrilla warfare tactics, sabotage, and acts of defiance. One notable event was the attack on the home of the British settler, which signaled the start of a full-scale rebellion. The Mau Mau sought to capture territory in the central highlands of Kenya, establishing bases from which to launch further operations. In response, the British colonial government resorted to brutal measures to suppress the uprising. They declared a state of emergency in 1952, which led to widespread violence and atrocity. Thousands of suspected Mau Mau supporters were arrested and detained in camps. The conditions in these camps were horrific, with reports of torture, starvation, and abuse surfacing regularly. British forces employed a strategy of terror, using collective punishment against communities suspected of harboring Mau Mau sympathies. One of the most notorious aspects of the uprising was the systematic use of violence by both the Mau Mau and British forces. The war was characterized by gruesome retaliations and brutal counterinsurgency tactics. The British employed screening processes that involved separating suspected insurgents from civilians, leading to significant human rights violations. The widely reported abuses during this time left a lasting scar on the collective memory of the Kikuyu people. International attention eventually turned to Kenya, as the atrocities committed by the British colonial authorities attracted criticism from human rights groups and the global community. However, Much of the narrative surrounding the Mau Mau movement remained overshadowed for decades. It wasn't until much later that historians began to delve deeper into this complex history, painting a more nuanced picture of the people involved and the conditions that led to the uprising. Despite the harsh repression, the Mau Mau uprising had significant impacts. It served as a catalyst for other anti-colonial movements across Africa, inspiring future generations in their quest for freedom and self-determination. The struggle of the Mau Mau would resonate beyond its time, igniting a sense of national identity and unity among Kenyans. The fight showcased the desire for dignity and justice against oppressive rule, themes that would echo throughout the continent in various forms. By the end of the 1950s, the tide was shifting. With increasing international pressure and the realization that colonial rule was unsustainable, the British government began to reconsider its stance. The uprising, although suppressed, played a crucial role in the eventual shift toward independence. Kenya would finally attain self-governance in 1963, marking a new chapter in its history. The Mau Mau uprising is not just a story of conflict. It is a testament to the resilience and tenacity of a people fighting for their rights. Today, it remains an essential part of Kenya's national narrative, highlighting the complexities of colonial history and the enduring fight for justice. As this chapter is revisited, it serves as a reminder of the importance of acknowledging past struggles in understanding contemporary issues related to governance, land rights, and social justice in Kenya and beyond. Ultimately, the Mau Mau uprising exemplifies the broader struggle against colonialism, with implications that extend far beyond the borders of Kenya. It illustrates the universal quest for dignity and freedom, represented through the lives and sacrifices of those who dared to defy oppression. This story, often relegated to the margins of history, invites reflection on the impact of colonialism and the enduring power of collective resistance. Unit M731 was a covert Japanese military unit that operated during World War II, infamous for conducting some of the most inhumane experiments in history. While many aspects of World War II have been thoroughly documented and widely studied, the activities of Unit 731 remain shrouded in secrecy and censorship. This organization primarily focused on biological warfare, and its experiments were both shocking and terrifying. The unit was established in 1936, primarily in Harbin, which is located in what was then occupied Manchuria. The unit was led by General Shiro Ishii, a physician and army officer. His vision was to conduct research that would ultimately give Japan an edge in warfare. The methods used by Unit 731 were grotesque and utterly ruthless. The subjects of their experiments included prisoners of war, political dissidents, and civilians, who were treated as mere test subjects with no regard for their humanity. One of the most notorious experiments involved the testing of biological agents on living subjects. In a chilling example of human cruelty, the unit would deliberately infect individuals with various diseases, such as plague, anthrax, and cholera. These individuals were not only observed for the progression of their illnesses, but often subjected to horrific procedures to study the effects of these diseases on the human body. For instance, many were injected with pathogens without any anesthesia, and the effects were monitored while they writhed in agony. Beyond infection, the unit also conducted vivisection, a practice that involved performing surgeries on living subjects without anesthesia to dissect and study their organs. These operations were often carried out simply to observe the physical responses to injuries or diseases. This inhumane practice provided no real medical benefit, but it offered insights that the military leaders considered valuable for developing biological weapons. In addition to their gruesome medical experiments, Unit 731 was heavily involved in developing and testing various biological weapons. They experimented with regrowth facilities for pathogens to create bombs that could disperse deadly germs over cities. Some of the experiments were carried out on a large scale, leading to devastating and widespread infections in populated areas. The ramifications of these activities had long-lasting effects on public health in the regions affected. The full extent of Unit 731's actions remained largely hidden for decades after the war. Many of the findings generated through their experiments were classified, and the Japanese government, as well as several historians, worked to suppress this dark chapter of military history. Reasons for this include a desire to protect the reputations of those involved and the post-war rebuilding of Japan, which sought to project a new image to the world. After the war, in exchange for immunity from prosecution, many members of Unit 731 were granted leniency by American authorities who were interested in the research findings and operational strategies of the unit. As a consequence, the stories of the victims and the true nature of the experiments have largely been overlooked in mainstream historical accounts. In recent years, however, there has been a growing movement to acknowledge and discuss the history of Unit 731.731. Books, documentaries, and films have begun to shed light on its horrific practices and the ethical implications of such research. Many survivors and families of victims have sought acknowledgement and justice, insisting that the atrocities be recognized in history. While discussions about Unit 731 can evoke deep discomfort, the importance of remembering these events is crucial to ensuring that such inhumanity is not repeated. It serves as a cautionary tale about the capabilities of mankind when science is misused and ethics are cast aside in the pursuit of power. As awareness of Unit 731 continues to grow, historians and educators emphasize the need to address uncomfortable truths. This includes the need to ensure that future generations understand the complexities of war, the ethical dilemmas faced by scientists, and the moral responsibility to treat all people with dignity and respect. In acknowledging such dark histories, society can work towards a more just and humane future, ensuring that the memories of the victims are honored and remembered. The story of Unit 731 is not just a story of horror and inhumanity. It serves as a powerful reminder of the human capacity for compassion and the necessity of vigilance in the protection of human rights. It challenges us to reflect on how history is recorded and taught, and why it is essential to confront even the most uncomfortable aspects of our past. Understanding the legacy of Unit 731 invites conversations about medical ethics, wartime conduct, and the responsibilities of scientists and military personnel. As we move forward, it is vital to incorporate these lessons into our collective memory, advocating for a world where respect for life and human dignity prevails. The Homestead Strike of 1892 stands as a pivotal moment in U.S. labor history, a violent confrontation that brought to light the burgeoning struggles between industrial workers and the powers that sought to control them. Nestled in the town of Homestead, Pennsylvania, this event unfolded against the backdrop of the steel industry, which was booming at that time due to the rapid industrialization of America. The steel mill in Homestead was owned by Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest industrialists of the era. Carnegie had built a reputation as a man of the people, often presenting himself as a champion of workers' rights. However, the reality for the workers at the Carnegie Steel Company was far less idyllic. These laborers toiled under grueling conditions, facing long hours and meager pay. As the labor force organized to demand better conditions, the tensions in the air began to escalate. In the spring of 1892, Carnegie and his business partner, Henry Clay Frick, decided to cut wages at the Homestead Mill in an effort to increase profits. This decision ignited the workers' anger. They were members of the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers, a powerful union, and they had no intention of accepting Frick's wage cuts quietly. Under the leadership of union representatives, the workers voted to strike, fully aware of the risks involved. The strike began on July 1, 1892, leading to the closure of the mill and a standoff between the workers and the management. Frick, determined to break the union's power, took drastic measures. He hired the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, a private security firm known for its ruthlessness in dealing with labor unrest. Frick's intentions were clear. He aimed to dismantle the union and assert his control over the mill and its workers. On July 6th, the situation reached a boiling point. The Pinkertons arrived by boat, armed and ready for confrontation. The workers, who had fortified their positions around the mill, were ready to defend their cause. A violent clash ensued, with shots fired on both sides. The conflict quickly escalated as the strikers battled the armed agents, leading to several deaths and injuries. The violence captured national attention, and the event soon became a sensational story across the country. The state government intervened, sending in the Pennsylvania National Guard to restore order. With their support, Frick was able to regain control of the mill. However, the strike was far from over. Though the union members remained steadfast in their demands, they faced overwhelming opposition. The Pinkertons, with the backing of the state, employed military force to suppress the strike, leading to the arrest and dispersal of many workers. Public opinion around the strike was polarized. Some viewed the workers as heroes standing up against corporate greed, while others labeled them as troublemakers, endangering the stability of the nation. The strike revealed the deep divisions in American society. On one side were the powerful industrialists like Carnegie and Frick, who amassed colossal wealth, and on the other side were the laborers, struggling for basic rights and recognition. As weeks turned into months, the strike diminished in strength. The union lost its influence, which led to a severe setback for labor rights in the region. In the aftermath, the failure of the Homestead Strike had lasting repercussions. It signaled a difficult period for labor movements throughout America, as corporate interests and government policies embraced an anti-union stance. Moreover, it established a precedent for how industrial conflicts would unfold in the years to come. The story of the Homestead Strike is often understated in textbooks, overshadowed by other historical events. Yet, its significance lies in the lessons it teaches about the power dynamics at play in a rapidly industrializing society. It highlights the importance of solidarity among workers, the struggle for rights in the face of adversity, and the often contentious relationship between labor and management. As we reflect on the Homestead Strike and its implications, it becomes clear that the fight for workers' rights was and remains a fundamental chapter in the American narrative. The courage displayed by the Homestead steelworkers in the face of violence and oppression serves as an enduring reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and equitable treatment in the workplace. These events not only shaped the lives of those involved, but also laid the groundwork for future labor rights movements, influencing policies and protections that workers benefit from today. The Homestead Strike was more than just a violent confrontation. It was a significant event that highlighted the complex interplay between labor, industry, and society. By examining this moment in history, we can understand better the rich legacy of the labor movement and its role in shaping the modern workforce. The sacrifices made by those workers in 1892 echo through the decades, reminding us that the pursuit of fairness often comes at a price, and the struggle for dignity and respect in the workplace is an essential part of the human story. In April of 1914, a tragic event unfolded in Colorado that would leave an indelible mark on American labor history. This event, known as the Ludlow Massacre, was born out of years of tension between coal miners and the powerful corporations that employed them. It highlights a period when workers were fighting, not just for better wages, but for their very rights to exist and work in a safe environment. At the center of this conflict was the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, owned by John D. Rockefeller, Jr. This company had a monopoly over the coal industry in the region, and its practices towards the miners were harsh and unforgiving. The miners often faced long hours, dangerous working conditions, and meager pay. This exploitation created desperation among the workers, leading them to organize for better treatment. They sought to join the United Mine Workers of America, a union that promised to represent their interests and advocate for their rights. In September 1913, as the miners began their strike for better conditions, they faced fierce opposition. Striking workers were evicted from company-owned homes, forcing many families into tent colonies. These makeshift towns were established in the harsh Colorado landscape, where miners and their families sought shelter and solidarity. Despite the difficult circumstances, the miners were united in their struggle, hoping to change their fate. Tensions escalated as the strike continued. The coal company hired armed guards to intimidate and suppress the workers. These men, known as strikebreakers, were often brought in from outside the state. The coal miners faced violence and intimidation, but their resolve remained strong. The miners and their families held prayer vigils and community gatherings, drawing strength from their unity. As the weeks turned into months, the situation grew increasingly volatile. On April 20th, 1914, the conflict reached its peak in Ludlow, a small community in southern Colorado. It was here that a confrontation between strikers and the Colorado National Guard erupted, resulting in a horrific outcome that would shock the nation. Members of the National Guard conducted an attack on the tent colony, igniting a horrific battle. The tent colony, a symbol of the miners' struggle, was razed to the ground, and during the chaos, shots rang out. It was a dark day, as several miners and their family members lost their lives, including women and children. The events at Ludlow were not just a local tragedy. They resonated throughout the United States, illuminating the dire conditions faced by workers in the early 20th century. The massacre sparked outrage in labor circles and communities across the nation. Labor leaders, reformers, and sympathizers denounced the actions of the National Guard and the coal company, calling for justice and change. In the following weeks, the aftermath of the Ludlow Massacre served as a catalyst for broader labor reforms. The tragic deaths of miners, women, and children became rallying points for future labor movements. Public opinion began to shift, highlighting the urgent need for regulations to protect workers' rights. The events raised awareness about the inequities faced by laborers and the lengths to which corporations would go to maintain control. In the years that followed, the Ludlow Massacre became an emblem of the struggle for labor rights in America. Memorials were erected, and anniversaries marked the tragedy, serving as reminders of the sacrifices made by those in the fight for fair working conditions. This legacy continued to resonate through subsequent labor movements, influencing policy changes that would grant workers more rights and protections. The Ludlow Massacre serves as a crucial reminder of a pivotal moment in American history, one that exemplifies the conflict between labor and corporate power. It illustrates the importance of standing up for one's rights and the impact such struggles can have on society. In turning the tide for labor rights, The events at Ludlow showcased the tenacity and resilience of those who stood united in the face of adversity. Today, remembering the Ludlow Massacre is about honoring the lives and struggles of those who fought tirelessly for dignity and respect on the job. Their sacrifices paved the way for generations to come, leading to improvements in labor laws and working conditions. The echoes of this tragic chapter remind us that the fight for justice in the workplace is ongoing, and that the lessons learned from the past continue to be relevant in our present. As we reflect on this moment in history, let us carry forward the commitment to workers' rights and the recognition of the significance of organized labor. The stories of those who were affected by the Ludlow Massacre serve as powerful narratives, urging us to remain vigilant in protecting the rights of workers everywhere. In doing so, we honor the memory of those who sought a better life, paving the way for future generations. Project MKUltra was a secret program initiated by the Central Intelligence Agency, commonly known as the CIA, during the height of the Cold War. This initiative emerged in the early 1950s amidst a growing concern about Soviet advances in mind control and psychological manipulation. The goal of the program was to explore the possibilities of using drugs and other techniques to control human behavior, especially in the context of espionage and interrogation. The origins of MKUltra can be traced back to earlier studies of brain function and human behavior, but it took a more nefarious turn as the CIA began to test new methods that could potentially be utilized for covert operations. The agency was particularly interested in substances that could alter perceptions, induce amnesia, or incite erratic behavior. To this end, various drugs, including LSD, were experimented with, as well as a range of other chemical compounds. One of the most infamous aspects of MKUltra was its reliance on non-consensual testing. Many of the individuals involved were unaware that they were participating in an experiment. Some were psychiatric patients, while others were simply unsuspecting citizens. The lack of consent raised profound ethical questions that have echoed through the years, especially in the wake of revelations about the program's activities in the 1970s. Throughout its existence, a variety of techniques were applied to attempt to influence and control the human mind. Hypnosis was a significant focus, as operatives sought to discover if they could plant suggestions or memories through trance states. This led to a significant interest in the idea of the Manchurian Candidate, a term that emerged from popular culture to describe an individual who could be manipulated to carry out actions without their conscious awareness. The use of drugs was perhaps one of the most dramatic facets of MKUltra. Substances like LSD were not only tested on volunteers, but also administered to individuals without their knowledge. Agents watched to see how these substances affected behavior and decision-making. Stories emerged of individuals reportedly becoming uncontrollable under the influence of these drugs, raising alarm bells about the ethical implications of such experiments. The program spanned many years and included a wide range of projects. One notable effort involved Operation Midnight Climax, where the CIA set up safe houses in San Francisco and New York. Here, prostitutes would lure men to these locations, where their interactions would be secretly filmed. Agents would observe how various substances affected behavior in real time, treating their subjects as mere pawns in a larger game. Decades later, as information about MKUltra started to trickle out through investigations and declassified documents, the public reaction was one of shock and horror. Reports revealed a culture of secrecy, deception, and a blatant disregard for individual rights. Many who had been part of the experiments began to come forward, sharing their stories of psychological trauma and disorientation. Despite the significant implications and ethical violations associated with Project MKUltra, the majority of those involved in the program faced no repercussions. The CIA's insistence on the need for secrecy and its justifications for the experiments led to serious discussions about government accountability, transparency, and moral responsibility. As technology and psychological understanding have evolved, the legacy of MKUltra continues to spark debate. It serves as a cautionary tale about the lengths to which institutions may go in the name of national security. The balance between achieving strategic objectives and maintaining ethical standards remains a pivotal issue in intelligence agencies and government affairs. In popular culture, MKUltra has found its way into books, films, and television, often highlighted as an example of government overreach and the darker side of scientific exploration. These portrayals can sometimes blur the lines between fact and fiction, yet they reflect an enduring fascination with the interplay between power, control, and the human psyche. Often omitted from textbooks and mainstream discussions, the details of Project MKUltra encourage a deeper examination of human rights, ethical standards in research, and the responsibilities that come with power. The lessons gleaned from this era remind us of the importance of vigilance in maintaining ethical oversight and individual rights within the realms of science and government. Ultimately, Project MKUltra stands as a stark reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked ambition and secrecy. It compels us to reflect on the relationship between authority, morality, and the human experience, urging a collective awareness of the need for transparency and accountability in endeavors that touch the lives of individuals. The shadows cast by MKUltra linger, inspiring ongoing questions about the ethics of mind control and the fragile nature of personal autonomy. In a world where knowledge and power intersect, the Philippine-American War was a significant but often overshadowed chapter in United States history. Taking place from 1899 to 1902, this conflict arose following the Spanish-American War, when the U.S. secured control over the Philippines as part of its treaty with Spain. While many may think of the Spanish-American War as a distant conflict that led to the independence of several territories, the subsequent Philippine-American War reveals the complexities of American foreign policy and the consequences of imperialism. The Philippines had been a Spanish colony for more than 3 centuries, and the desire for independence among Filipinos had grown increasingly strong by the late 19th century. Led by figures like Emilio Aguinaldo, the Filipino revolutionary movement sought to establish a sovereign nation after declaring independence from Spain on June 12, 1898. The arrival of American forces in Manila transformed aspirations for self-determination into a bitter conflict. The war began as a result of the U.S. decision to annex the Philippines instead of granting it independence. This decision ignited widespread anger among the Filipino population, who felt betrayed by an ally they had fought alongside against colonial rule. The initial battle occurred on February 4, 1899, when an American soldier shot a Filipino in what remains a murky account of events. This incident escalated into a full-blown confrontation. From the outset, the war proved to be exceedingly violent and contentious. The U.S. military, equipped with advanced technology and a well-established system of logistics, faced an insurgent force that utilized guerrilla warfare tactics. The Filipinos, familiar with their terrain and motivated by a profound desire for freedom, were relentless. The clash of conventional warfare techniques against unconventional tactics led to a brutal and drawn-out conflict. As the war progressed, American forces occupied major cities and fought to seize control of rural areas. During this time, A hardline approach was adopted to suppress resistance. Brutal tactics emerged, including the implementation of so-called water cure methods, which has led to ongoing debates about the moral implications and legacy of U.S. actions during the war. The American military employed these harsh tactics in a desperate bid to quell the insurrection, leading to significant loss of life and suffering among the Filipino population. In total, estimates suggest that hundreds of thousands of Filipinos lost their lives as a direct result of the conflict, whether through combat, disease, or starvation. The U.S. casualties were comparatively low, with approximately 4,300 American soldiers losing their lives. This disparity has influenced how historians perceive the war, leading to discussions about the ethics of U.S. colonial expansion. The effects of the conflict extended far beyond the battlefield. The Philippine-American War reshaped the geopolitical landscape of Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Following the war, the U.S. established a colonial government, implementing reforms that included educational opportunities and infrastructure development. However, these changes were often overshadowed by the ongoing resentment and resistance felt among Filipinos. Even as the U.S. sought to portray itself as a benevolent colonial power bringing progress and civilization, the sentiments among the Filipino people were mixed. Many viewed the U.S. presence as an extension of imperialism that trivialized their struggle for genuine independence. Rather than liberators, countless Filipinos considered the American forces as new oppressors. This conflict laid the foundation for decades of nationalist movement that eventually resulted in Philippine independence. Over time, the Philippine-American War faded from mainstream educational materials, often overshadowed by larger conflicts such as World War I and World War II. This neglect has sparked conversations about the importance of remembering less discussed conflicts that shaped the nation's history and the lives of people across the globe. The lessons learned from the Philippine-American War continue to resonate today as nations grapple with the complexities of intervention, sovereignty, and the consequences of military engagement. The historical implications of this war remind us that the narratives surrounding conflict are often multifaceted and can differ dramatically based on perspective. The voices of those who experienced the conflict, both American and Filipino, provide valuable insights into the human experience of war, making it crucial to study and discuss these histories. Modern perspectives on the Philippine-American War encourage a deeper exploration of U.S. action in international affairs. As history tends to repeat itself, understanding the nuances of past decisions equips us to navigate contemporary geopolitical challenges. In summary, the Philippine-American War reminds us that wars are not only fought on battlefields, but also waged in hearts and minds, shaping the identities and destinies of nations. Recognizing and understanding this often overlooked conflict enriches our comprehension of history and underscores the significance of reflecting on our past as a means to forge a more informed and equitable future. The lessons drawn from this period in history emphasize the necessity of empathy, understanding, and the pursuit of justice in international relations today and tomorrow. The Haitian Revolution, a monumental event in history, stands as a testament to the resilience and determination of a group of people fighting for their freedom and rights. It began in 1791 on the island of Saint-Domingue, which was a French colony known for its immense wealth generated through slave labor on sugar and coffee plantation. What unfolded over the next decade would change the course of history, marking the first and only successful slave revolution that led to the establishment of a free nation governed by former slaves. At the heart of the Haitian Revolution were enslaved people who endured unimaginable hardships and brutality. These individuals stripped of their rights and dignity, were inspired by the prevailing sentiments of the Enlightenment and the successful independence movements in America and France. Led by figures like Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the revolutionaries sought not only their own freedom, but also the abolition of slavery. The revolution ignited with a significant uprising in August 1791, fueled by a desire for liberation and justice. Enslaved individuals banded together, forming militias and engaging in guerrilla warfare against the French colonial authorities. Initially, the French responded with violence and repression, but they soon recognized the strength of the insurgents and the widespread discontent among the enslaved population. The revolutionaries, demonstrating remarkable organization and strategy, gained ground and began to consolidate their power. As the conflict escalated, the Haitian Revolution also intersected with global events, notably the French Revolution. The upheaval in France in 1789, which called for liberty, equality, and fraternity, resonated deeply with the enslaved population in Haiti. Initially, the French adopted a progressive stance, declaring equality among all men. However, they quickly reverted to their colonial ways, leading to a complete breakdown of trust and a determination among the revolutionaries to fight for their rights. One of the most compelling leaders of the revolution was Toussaint Louverture, a former slave who emerged as a brilliant military commander and a skilled negotiator. He united various factions of the enslaved and free black population in Haiti, forging alliances and implementing reforms before the revolution spread throughout the island. Louverture's ability to navigate complex political landscapes earned him respect, but also made him a target. In 1802, he was betrayed and captured by French forces, but his legacy continued to inspire the fight for independence. The revolution finally culminated in 1804, when Jean-Jacques Dessalines, another key leader, declared Haiti's independence. This act not only liberated the nation from colonial rule, but also sent shockwaves around the world, challenging the established order and igniting revolutionary ideals globally. Haiti became the first independent Black republic and the second independent nation in the Americas after the United States. The significance of the Haitian Revolution cannot be overstated. It was a profound challenge to the historical narrative of slavery and colonialism. It stood as a powerful example of resistance against oppression, inspiring enslaved peoples and marginalized communities across the globe. Yet, despite its monumental achievements and global implications, the revolution often gets overlooked in educational curricula. Many reasons contribute to this underrepresentation. The history of Haiti has been marred by subsequent political instability, economic hardship, and foreign interventions, which have shaped a narrative that often sidelines the revolutionary spirit that once defined the nation. Furthermore, an enduring stigma associated with the Haitian Revolution has been perpetuated through cultural stereotypes and biases, leading to a lack of appreciation for its historical significance. Education plays a crucial role in shaping the understanding of history and including the Haitian Revolution in discussions about human rights, race, and resistance is essential. Recognizing this chapter of history fosters a deeper appreciation for the struggles faced by enslaved people and their fight against oppression. It highlights the important lessons of courage, unity, and the quest for justice. In understanding the Haitian Revolution, we are reminded that the fight for freedom does not happen in isolation. It connects to broader movements across the globe against colonialism, racism, and inequality. The legacy of the Haitian Revolution continues to resonate today as it exemplifies the enduring human spirit striving for dignity and respect. As we delve into this history, let us appreciate the courage and ingenuity of those who fought for their rights. The Haitian Revolution is not just a footnote in history, it is a cornerstone of the ongoing struggle for freedom and equality. Through this lens, we can better appreciate the complexities of our shared past and the paths we continue to walk toward justice. The story of Haiti is a powerful reminder that the quest for freedom is unyielding and that even against overwhelming odds, change is possible. The Rwandan Genocide stands as one of the most harrowing events of the late 20th century, a poignant reminder of the consequences of hatred and division. In 1994, in a span of just 100 days, approximately 800,000 people lost their lives in a brutal massacre, primarily targeting the Tutsi ethnic group, at the hands of the Hutu majority. This tragedy unfolded in a country often overlooked in history lessons outside of Africa, yet its implications resonate deeply across the globe. To understand the events of 1994, one must first look at the historical context of Rwanda. The nation had a long history of ethnic tensions between the Hutu and Tutsi people, which were exacerbated by colonial powers. The Belgians, who ruled Rwanda from the 1920s until independence in 1962, favored the Tutsi minority, instilling a sense of superiority that fueled resentment among the Hutu majority. This division not only set the stage for future conflict, but also entrenched systemic inequalities that would come to a head decades later. As Rwanda moved towards independence in the early 1960s, a series of violent uprisings occurred, and many Tutsis fled the country. The Hutus established a new government, which began to systematically exclude Tutsis from power. This historical backdrop created a volatile environment where political instability, economic hardship, and social unrest thrived. By the late 1980s, Rwanda was plagued by civil war, marked by the rise of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, composed mostly of Tutsi exiles, leading to further polarization. The assassination of President Juvenal Habyarimana on April 6, 1994, served as the catalyst for the genocide. Habyarimana's plane was shot down as it approached Kigali, the capital of Rwanda. This event ignited the existing tensions and was used by extremist Hutu leaders as a justification to launch a massive campaign against Tutsis. What followed was a rapid and systematic slaughter across the country. Neighbors turned against neighbors, and communities that had coexisted for years found themselves embroiled in unimaginable violence. The methods of the genocide were horrifyingly brutal. People were killed using machetes, clubs, and other means in a display of raw brutality that shocked the world. The genocide was characterized not only by mass killings, but also by sexual violence, with countless women subjected to rape and torture. Families were torn apart, and entire communities were wiped out within days. The sheer speed and scale of the violence overwhelmed not only the Rwandan authorities, but also the international community, which stood by and watched. The international response to the genocide has been criticized severely. Despite clear warnings from humanitarian organizations and individuals regarding the escalating violence, the UN and various countries failed to intervene effectively. The limited peacekeeping force present in Rwanda, the United Nations Assistance Mission for Rwanda, was ill-equipped and lacked the necessary mandate to protect civilians or prevent the escalating violence. This inaction has led to questions surrounding responsibility and the moral obligation of nations to intervene in times of crisis. In the aftermath of the genocide, Rwanda faced immense challenges. The nation was left in ruins, both physically and psychologically. The country needed to confront the trauma and devastation left in the wake of the killings, and this required an extraordinary effort to promote reconciliation and rebuild the fractured society. One of the key initiatives was the establishment of Gakaka courts, community-based tribunals that aim to bring justice, rebuild communities, and encourage dialogue between survivors and perpetrators. These courts offered a unique approach that emphasized truth-telling and collective healing over traditional punitive measures. Rwanda's journey since 1994 has been remarkable and complex. The government has emphasized unity and recovery, investing in education, healthcare, and economic development. While the country has made significant strides, challenges remain. Ongoing discussions about history, memory, and justice persist, as the wounds of the past are not easily healed. The legacy of the genocide still impacts generations, and the stories of those who lost their lives or survived continue to remind us of the need for vigilance against hatred and division. The global significance of the Rwandan genocide cannot be overstated. It serves as a critical example of the consequences of unchecked hatred and the failure of the international community to prevent mass atrocities. It urges a reflection on the responsibilities that nations carry in protecting human rights, fostering peace, and promoting tolerance. The lessons learned from Rwanda resonate in various contexts today, reminding us that the fight against injustice and discrimination is an ongoing struggle that requires collective action. As we remember the tragedy of the Rwandan genocide, it is essential to honor the lives lost and acknowledge the resilience of survivors. Their stories serve as powerful reminders of the human capacity for both cruelty and compassion, urging societies to reflect on their values and remain vigilant against the forces that can lead to division and hatred. The legacy of Rwanda invites us to build a more just and inclusive world, where the prevention of such tragedies is organized as a global priority, emphasizing respect for human dignity, regardless of ethnicity, religion, or background. The massacre at El Mozote is a significant yet often overlooked chapter in the history of the Salvadoran Civil War. This tragic event took place in December 1981 in a small village called El Mozote, located in the Morazan department of El Salvador. Understanding this massacre requires a glimpse into the broader context of the Salvadoran Civil War, which lasted from 1980 to 1992. At its core, the Civil War was about deep-seated socio-economic inequalities and political repression in El Salvador. The ruling elite, supported by the military, maintained strict control over power and resources, resulting in widespread poverty and disenfranchisement for the majority of the population. In response, various leftist guerrilla groups formed, demanding social change and greater equity. Tensions escalated, leading to an armed conflict that wreaked havoc across the country. In December 1981, amidst this turmoil, government forces targeted El Mozote under the pretext of flushing out guerrilla insurgents. However, the reality was a horrifying display of state-sponsored violence against civilians. Soldiers rounded up the inhabitants of the village, including men, women, and children. In a systematic act of brutality, thousands of villagers were executed. Reports suggest that the estimates of the dead range from 800 to 1,200 people, making this one of the largest massacres in modern Latin American history. The military's justification for the massacre was rooted in the belief that the villagers were harboring guerrillas. However, in many cases, the victims were innocent civilians, caught in a brutal crossfire of ideological battles. The methods employed during the attack were particularly gruesome. Soldiers used machine guns and other weapons to eliminate entire families. Infants and children were not spared, with accounts detailing the horrific violence inflicted upon the youngest members of the community. Survivors of the massacre were left with deep psychological scars and a sense of loss that reverberated throughout the years. Many fled to the mountains, seeking refuge from the brutality that had claimed their loved ones. The trauma experienced by these individuals is immeasurable, and their stories stand as a testament to the horrors of war and the fragility of human life. In the aftermath of this tragic event, the Salvadoran government initially sought to cover up the massacre. Mainstream media, both nationally and internationally, largely ignored the atrocity, which allowed the narrative to be shaped by the military's accounts. Many in power sought to dismiss the events in El Mozote as mere propaganda by guerrilla supporters, illustrating the lengths to which authority figures would go to evade accountability. However, the truth eventually emerged, largely thanks to courageous journalists, human rights organizations, and dedicated survivors who refused to remain silent. One such pivotal moment came in the late 1990s, when the human rights group, the Commission for the Truth for El Salvador, released its findings. The report confirmed the magnitude of the massacre and identified the military as responsible for these heinous acts. This shifted public perception and sparked further investigations into wartime atrocities. The significance of El Mozote extends beyond its role as a single event within the Salvadoran Civil War. It highlights the broader issues of human rights violations and the struggle for justice in post-conflict societies. The massacre serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of unrestrained power and the importance of safeguarding human rights, particularly in times of political turmoil. Commemorative efforts have since been made to honor the victims of El Mozote. Memorials and remembrance events serve not only to pay tribute, but also to educate future generations about the brutality of war. Recognizing these historical events is crucial in understanding the roots of contemporary issues in El Salvador and Latin America at large. Today, El Mozote stands as a symbol of resilience and a call to action for justice and accountability. The push for recognition and reparations continues, emphasizing the need for society to confront its past and the importance of collective memory. The legacies of such tragedies can serve as powerful motivators for change and inspire movements that advocate for the rights and dignity of all individuals. In exploring the events surrounding the massacre at El Mozote, one gains insight into the complexity of human behavior during times of conflict. It serves as a stark reminder of both the capacity for violence and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the aftermath of such darkness. The stories of the survivors and the memory of those lost remain vital in shaping a more just future, ensuring that the lessons of history are not forgotten. By reflecting on these events, we draw closer to acknowledging the truth of our shared human experience. It encourages empathy, understanding, and a commitment to ensuring that such atrocities do not recur, not just in El Salvador, but anywhere in the world facing conflict and strife today. Through education and remembrance, we can honor the past while striving for a better tomorrow, where the rights and dignity of every individual are respected and upheld. The massacre at El Mozote remains a crucial chapter in understanding the fight for justice and the ongoing journey toward reconciliation in societies scarred by violence. The Lavender Scare refers to a troubling chapter in United States history, one that unfolded during the mid-20th century and is often overshadowed by its more widely recognized counterpart, McCarthyism. While most are familiar with the witch hunts for supposed communist sympathizers that characterized the Red Scare, the Lavender Scare brought to light another form of persecution, that against LGBTQ individuals, particularly in government employment. This narrative reveals how fear, prejudice, and a desire for conformity shaped the lives of countless Americans. In the 1950s, a collective paranoia gripped the nation as the Cold War intensified. The fear of espionage from communist agents led to a campaign against anyone deemed undesirable, and this included members of the LGBT community who faced intense scrutiny and discrimination. The prevailing belief at the time was not only that communism was a direct threat to American values, but that being gay or lesbian also rendered one untrustworthy and disloyal. This was a time when aligning with traditional values was seen as crucial for national security, and those who diverged from the norm were often cast aside. The term Lavender Scare, coined much later, encompasses the systematic efforts by the federal government to rid itself of LGBTQ employees. In 1953, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed Executive Order 10,450, which effectively barred homosexuals from federal employment. The rationale was simple, yet deeply flawed. It was believed that those who identified as gay or lesbian were susceptible to blackmail and therefore posed a risk to national security. This dangerous stereotype led to widespread investigations and a culture of fear where individuals lived in constant dread of being outed. During this turbulent era, thousands of individuals lost their jobs, reputations, and even their homes. Many faced harassment and violence simply for being who they were. The Lavender Scare paralleled the activities of the House Un-American Activities Committee, which famously interrogated suspected communists. While the latter focused on political ideology, the former targeted personal identity and lifestyle. Both movements were fueled by paranoia, misinformation, and a desire to eliminate perceived threats to societal norms. To contextualize this, imagine working diligently in a job you love, only to be informed that your very identity excludes you from having a place in that world. This is what many experienced during the Lavender Scare. Government jobs that had once offered stability and pride became traps, where a simple revelation could result in a devastating loss. This wave of persecution did not exist in isolation. It intersected with other movements, echoing the battles for civil rights and societal acceptance. LGBTQ individuals banded together, advocating for their rights and dignity in the face of systemic discrimination. Activist groups began to emerge quietly, laying the groundwork for future movements that would champion equality and justice. While today, we celebrate the milestones achieved for LGBTQ rights, such as the legalization of same-sex marriage and protections against discrimination, it is important to reflect on the darker aspects of history. The Lavender Scare highlights how fear can manifest in destructive ways, creating divisions in society and targeting those who dare to be different. The repercussions of this collective trauma were felt for generations, as many in the LGBTQ community strive to reclaim their identities and fight against the stigma still clinging to them. In many ways, the Lavender Scare is a call to remember and understand the past. It serves as a reminder of the power of fear and the lengths to which society may go to enforce conformity. The persecution faced by LGBTQ individuals parallels the unjust treatment of countless others throughout history, emphasizing that oppression can wear many faces. Revisiting the narrative of the Lavender Scare compels us to consider the impact of policies and prejudices today. It pushes us to confront the questions of acceptance, understanding, and the importance of diversity in our communities. We can only move forward by learning from where we have been. As we reflect on this period, we stand not just with the memories of those affected, but also with an enduring commitment to fostering an inclusive society where all identities can thrive without fear. Thus, the story of the Lavender Scare is not merely a historical footnote. It is an essential part of the American narrative, a cautionary tale that challenges us to recognize and combat the remnants of prejudice that persist in various forms. Acknowledging this part of our history ensures that we honor those who suffered and continue working toward a future defined by compassion, acceptance, and equality for everyone, regardless of who they love or how they identify. Let it inspire us to create a world in which diversity is celebrated, not suppressed, ensuring that the scars of the past contribute to a more vibrant and empathetic future. The Banana Wars refer to a series of military interventions by the United States in Latin America during the early 20th century, particularly in Central America and the Caribbean. This fascinating period sheds light on the intersection of international politics, economics, and culture, emphasizing how corporate interests influenced American foreign policy. To understand the context, we must first look at the economic significance of bananas during this era. By the late 19th and early 20th century, bananas had emerged as an essential export item for several Latin American countries, particularly Honduras, Guatemala, and Costa Rica. American companies, notably the United Fruit Company, recognized the profitability of this lucrative trade. The United Fruit Company was not just a business. It became a powerful entity that wielded considerable influence over politics in Central America. The term Banana Republic was coined during this time to describe countries that were politically unstable, economically dependent on a single export, and heavily influenced by foreign corporations. The United States, wanting to protect its interests in these nations, began intervening in their political affairs to ensure that friendly governments were in place. One pivotal moment occurred in 1903, when the United States supported the independence of Panama from Colombia. This move was primarily driven by American interests in constructing the Panama Canal, which would significantly enhance trade routes and strengthen U.S. maritime capabilities. However, this intervention also reflected a broader pattern of manipulation in Central America, driven by economic interests rather than a genuine desire to promote democracy or stability. Honduras became a focal point of U.S. military action. In the early 1900s, the United States intervened multiple times to suppress uprisings that threatened American interests. The 1911 intervention is a notable example, as U.S. Marines landed to support a coup that reinstated a dictator favorable to the United Fruit Company. These actions often disregarded the autonomy of the nations involved, leading to long-lasting effects on their political landscapes. Guatemala faced similar interventions. In 1954, a covert operation known as Operation PBS Success, orchestrated by the Central Intelligence Agency, overthrew democratically elected President Jacobo Arbenz. His land reforms threatened the United Fruit Company's monopoly on banana production, prompting U.S. intervention. The consequences of this action were dire, leading to decades of civil conflict in Guatemala, with repercussions that are still felt today. The Dominican Republic had its share of U.S. military interventions as well. In 1916, American forces occupied the nation, citing instability and the necessity of protecting American investments. This occupation lasted until 1924 and was marked by resistance from local populations, illustrating the ongoing tensions caused by U.S. interventions. The Banana Wars also extended to Nicaragua, where U.S. military presence was established to protect American commercial interests. The intervention in the 1920s sought to control the political landscape, with the U.S. backing the dictatorship of Anastasio Somoza. This engagement hindered the establishment of a democratic process in the country for decades. As the 20th century progressed, the implications of the Banana Wars began to surface more clearly. Resentment grew among Latin American nations toward what they perceived as imperialistic behavior by the United States. Many Latin Americans viewed the interventions as an affront to their sovereignty, leading to a rise in nationalist movements across the region. Through these military interventions, the United States sought not only to protect U.S. economic interests, but also to firmly establish its influence in the Western Hemisphere. This led to a complicated legacy that shaped future U.S.-Latin American relations. The perception of America as a bully in the region contributed to ongoing tensions, culminating in later events such as the Cuban Revolution. In contemporary discussions, the Banana Wars serve as a reminder of how economic interests can drive foreign policy and lead to interventions that impact countries for generations. The narratives of these interventions are essential to understanding the historical context of U.S. relations with Latin America. They highlight a period often omitted in American history classes, emphasizing the importance of acknowledging all aspects of history to gain a fuller perspective of current events. Understanding the Banana Wars encourages a deeper examination of how power dynamics and economic interests have shaped nations. The reality is that history is complex and intertwined, and the influences of the past resonate into present and future relationships between nations. By reflecting on this chapter, we not only uncover lost stories, but also gain insight into the factors that mold our world today, fostering a dialogue that can lead to more constructive and equitable international relations in the future. The Sykes-Picot Agreement is one of the most significant and yet relatively obscure treaties that shaped the modern Middle East. In 1916, during World War I, two British diplomats, Mark Sykes and François-Georges Picot, drafted this secret agreement with the intent to divide the Ottoman Empire's Arab provinces between France and Britain once the empire was defeated. This agreement fundamentally altered the political landscape of the region and has had long-lasting implications, many of which are still felt today. The backdrop to the Sykes-Picot Agreement lies in the chaotic environment of World War I, where European powers were engaged in an intense struggle for dominance. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire, which had controlled a vast swath of territory across the Middle East for centuries, appeared imminent, creating opportunities for colonial aspirations. Britain and France, both looking to expand their empires, saw the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire as a chance to exert influence in the Arab world. The agreement stipulations were outlined in a map that delineated zones of influence. The two diplomats divided the Middle East into separate regions. Certain areas were designated for direct control by France or Britain, while others were allocated for international administration. For instance, the northern part of modern-day Iraq and Syria was assigned to the French, while the southern regions like Jordan and Palestine were mainly under British control. This division also disregarded ethnic, tribal, and sectarian boundaries, creating a patchwork of new nations that might not reflect the realities on the ground. The agreement remained secret for years, and it was not until the Bolsheviks released it in 1917 that the details became public. The revelation caused outrage among Arab leaders who felt betrayed, especially considering that they had been led to believe that Britain would support their independence from Ottoman rule in exchange for their revolt against the empire. This sense of betrayal ignited nationalist sentiments among various Arab groups, leading to an enduring legacy of mistrust towards Western powers. The consequences of the Sykes-Picot Agreement are evident in the region's modern borders. Many of the national boundaries drawn as a result do not coincide with the cultural or historical identities of the people living there. For instance, Iraq was carved out from the former Ottoman territories and encompassed diverse ethnic groups, including Arabs, Kurds, and Turkmen, leading to tensions and conflicts that are still present today. The rapid imposition of these borders often resulted in communities being divided and new nations being formed without significant regard for local identities or governance structures. The legacy of the Sykes-Picot Agreement extends beyond just the borders. It also laid the groundwork for a host of subsequent conflicts and power struggles in the region. The arbitrary division of territories contributed to sectarian strife, as different groups vied for control over their respective regions. The creation of artificial states often led to civil wars, uprisings, and external interventions, as seen in Lebanon, Iraq, and Syria, where historical rivalries were exacerbated by the imposition of foreign-drawn boundaries. Furthermore, the Sykes-Picot Agreement is often cited in discussions about Western imperialism and its impact on the Arab world. Scholars and commentators frequently analyze it as a prime example of how colonial powers disregarded the aspirations of local populations for self-determination, opting instead for strategic interests that aligned with their geopolitical goals. This sentiment continues to resonate in contemporary debates about the influence of Western nations in the Middle East. In the modern era, remnants of the Sykes-Picot legacy are evident in the calls for redrawing borders or resolving conflicts rooted in historical grievances. As nations in the Middle East continue to grapple with issues of identity, governance, and territorial integrity, the shadows of this secret agreement loom large. Discussions about the past serve as a reminder of the importance of understanding history in shaping national narratives and identity. The Sykes-Picot Agreement serves as a stark example of how political decisions made in one era can reverberate through time, impacting generations to come. It highlights the complex interplay of colonialism, nationalism, and the quest for power in a region rich in history and culture. By recognizing the implications of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, one can gain a deeper insight into the contemporary challenges facing the Middle East, as well as the quest for a stable and prosperous future that respects the diversity and aspirations of its people. The story of the Sykes-Picot Agreement encourages us to reflect on the consequences of political decisions made without the input or consideration of those directly impacted. It emphasizes the importance of listening to local voices and valuing the rich tapestry of cultures, histories, and identities that make up the Middle East. Understanding this history is crucial for fostering a just and equitable future for the region, one that acknowledges its past while striving towards reconciliation and unity. The legacies and lessons drawn from the Sykes-Picot Agreement remind us that borders are more than lines on a map. They represent the complex human stories and struggles that shape our world. The Great Chinese Famine, occurring from 1959 to 1961, stands as one of the most significant tragedies of the 20th century. Despite the profound impact it had on millions of lives, it remains a topic often overlooked in history lessons. To truly understand the extent and consequences of this famine, we must delve into the historical context and the policies that led to such a devastating outcome. In the late 1950s, China was under the leadership of Mao Zedong, who was advocating for rapid industrialization and agricultural modernization through a series of ambitious programs. The Great Leap Forward was one of these initiatives, introduced in 1958, aimed to transform China from an agrarian society into an industrialized socialist state within a remarkably short period. This plan called for the creation of large collective farms, where traditional farming practices would be replaced with more modern techniques. The goal was to significantly boost agricultural output and streamline production, but the reality proved vastly different. The implementation of the Great Leap Forward was riddled with challenges. Local officials, motivated by the pressure to meet unrealistic production targets, often exaggerated crop yields in their reports. This exaggeration was not merely a minor error, but a widespread phenomenon encouraged by a culture of fear and intimidation. Instead of taking corrective actions when crops failed or when production numbers did not meet expectations, local leaders resorted to inflating statistics to maintain favor with the central government. As a result, the true scale of agricultural shortfalls went unrecognized. In addition to these misreporting practices, the collectivization process dismantled traditional farming methods that had been honed over generations. Farmers were now working on large collective farms, where they often had little incentive to cultivate their land because the profits and yields were distributed among the collective. This lack of ownership led to a significant decline in productivity. Resentment grew among the farmers who felt disconnected from the fruits of their labor, leading to apathy in tending to their fields. The external factors exacerbated the situation further. Severe weather conditions, including droughts and floods, struck various regions of China during this period. These natural disasters, coupled with poor agricultural policies, created a perfect storm. Crop failures became rampant, and food scarcity spread. Instead of acknowledging these failures and responding accordingly, the government continued to promote its inflated production figures, leaving millions without adequate food supplies. As the famine set in, the consequences became dire. Reports suggest that between 15 to 40 million individuals perished due to starvation and malnutrition-related diseases. The devastation was widespread, affecting rural areas particularly hard, where the dependence on agriculture was high. Entire communities were affected, leading to a breakdown of social and family structure. People resorted to extreme measures to survive, including foraging for wild plants, and in some instances, reports surfaced of cannibalism, detailing the depths of desperation faced by many. The Great Chinese Famine had profound socioeconomic implications as well. The agricultural sector, once the foundation of China's economy, was irreparably damaged. Trust in the government eroded when the realities of starvation clashed with official narratives of prosperity. It took decades for China to recover and rebuild its agricultural system. The famine also instigated a reconsideration of policies and practices that shaped governance and resource allocation in the years that followed. Even today, discussions surrounding the Great Chinese Famine are sensitive and surrounded by controversy. Survivors often carry the weight of their experiences, and generations that followed grapple with the historical narrative that has either been minimized or neglected. Several survivors recount their experiences of loss, resilience, and the hunger that characterized this dark chapter in Chinese history, emphasizing the human stories that are often lost in broader historical discussions. In understanding this catastrophic event, we seek not simply to acknowledge a painful past, but to learn valuable lessons about governance, the consequences of policy decisions, and the profound impact that leadership can have on the lives of millions. The Great Chinese Famine reminds us of the fragility of human life in the face of systemic failures and the importance of accountability in leadership. On a broader scale, this famine sheds light on agricultural practices, food security, and the importance of sound policy rooted in reality rather than ideology. It emphasizes the need for governments to be responsive to the needs of their constituents and to ground their policies in the lived experiences of the people. The lessons drawn from this tragedy resonate far beyond the borders of China, urging societies worldwide to prioritize sustainable practices, transparency, and compassion towards those who govern, and those who are governed. By exploring the complexities of the Great Chinese Famine, we honor the memories of those who suffered and acknowledge the resilience inherent in human nature. History serves as a reminder of the past's trials, allowing us to pave a more aware and compassionate path for the future. The stories of those who lived through this time compel us to reflect, learn, and strive towards a more humane and equitable society for all. In the early 20th century, a group of young women, often referred to as the Radium Girls, became some of the earliest advocates for workplace safety in the United States, though their story remains largely untold. These women worked in factories, painting watch dials with a luminous substance that contained radium. The glowing paint made the watches easily readable in the dark, an innovation that captured the enthusiasm of a society enamored with progress and technological advancement. However, the bright, radiant glow came at a harrowing cost, one that these women would pay dearly for. The work environment in these factories was often grim. The girls, many of whom were fresh graduates from school, applied the radium paint with delicate brushes. To create a fine point on their brushes, they were instructed to lick the tips. This practice, innocuous on the surface, exposed them to radium daily, and they remained unaware of the dangers that lurked within the seemingly magical paint. The allure of the glowing dials was enough to blind them to the long-term consequences of their work. As the years went by, many of these young women began to show alarming signs of serious health issues. Symptoms ranging from severe fatigue to crippling pain became distressingly common. Some developed necrosis of the jaw, a horrific condition that left them with severe dental and bone problems. Others suffered from unexplained fractures and the impending touch of illness that weighed heavily on their spirits. What they did not know was that they were being poisoned by the very radium compound that had made their work so fashionable. The companies that employed the Radium Girls, like the United States Radium Corporation, maintained a culture of denial and negligence. Management dismissed concerns about health, insisting that the women were merely exaggerating their symptoms. The radium was viewed as a miracle substance, and no one anticipated that it could cause harm. The families of these women grew desperate as they watched their loved ones suffer without any explanation for their ailments. It was only after prolonged suffering and mounting fatalities that some of the girls decided they could no longer remain silent. They began to seek justice, not only for themselves, but for their fellow workers who faced the same cruel fate. The testimony of these women, recounting their harrowing experiences, exposed the darker side of the manufacturing industry and the lengths to which companies would go to protect their reputations and profit. In 1927, a landmark case emerged when 5 of the girls sued the United States Radium Corporation. This trial put the exploitation and neglect of these workers into the national spotlight. It also sparked public outrage and led to significant conversations about worker rights, safety measures, and labor laws. The bravery of the Radium Girls inspired a growing movement advocating for workplace safety regulations. As their story spread, public awareness about industrial hazards grew, prompting calls for better safety standards across various industries. The legal battle faced by the Radium Girls was not just a fight against a company, but a struggle against a societal system that favored profit over people. The eventual verdict in their favor marked not just a victory for these women, but also a pivotal moment in the fight for occupational health and safety rights. They became symbols of resilience, demonstrating that collective action could lead to meaningful change in the workplace. As a direct result of their advocacy, significant changes to workplace safety laws emerged in the United States. Regulations were established to protect workers from hazardous materials, leading to the creation of safeguards, health monitoring, and more stringent safety protocols. Organizations began to recognize their responsibility to provide safe working environments, ensuring that employees were protected from dangers like radium exposure. Despite the passing of decades, the legacy of the Radium Girls is still relevant today. Their fight showcases the importance of speaking out against injustice, the need for rigorous workplace safety standards, and the tremendous strength of individuals banding together for a cause. While their lives were tragically cut short by a system that failed them, their courage and determination laid the groundwork for improved safety protocols that protect countless workers now. Unfortunately, even today, there are industries where safety regulations are not strictly enforced and workers remain at risk. The Radium Girls story serves as a stark reminder of the ongoing challenges faced in promoting workplace safety and worker rights. By recounting their story, we honor their sacrifices and recognize the importance of continued vigilance in ensuring that history does not repeat itself in the world of labor. Though recognition of the Radium Girls has evolved over the years, they are often not included in the broader narratives of labor history. Their story is a critical chapter, underscoring the significance of accountability and ethics in industry. They were not mere statistics. They were vibrant young women with dreams and aspirations who transformed their tragic experiences into a beacon of hope for others. Indeed, the fight for workers' rights and safety continues in various forms today. The legacy of the Radium Girls endures as a testament to the human spirit's resilience, the power of collective action, and the importance of safe working conditions for all. Their story is not just a tale of loss, but also one of empowerment that encourages us to be advocates for safety, rights, and justice in every workplace. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, Argentina was engulfed in a dark chapter of its history known as the Dirty War. This term refers to a period of state terrorism in which the government sought to eradicate leftist dissent and any perceived threats. It is crucial to understand the social and political context that led to this harrowing time. In the years following a military coup in 1976, an atmosphere of fear and repression took hold of the nation. The military government believed that its survival depended on eliminating opposition. They targeted anyone suspected of opposing their regime. Students, activists, intellectuals, and even common citizens were swept up in a campaign of terror. The government justified its actions as necessary, claiming it was combating terrorism. However, the cost was staggering. Estimates suggest that between 10,000 to 30,000 individuals disappeared during this period. These individuals were taken away by government forces, and in many cases, their families were left without answers. Many families never learned the fate of their loved ones. Some of these individuals were held in secret detention centers, where they faced unimaginable horrors. Others were subjected to torture and ultimately executed. This systematic approach to eliminating opposition was not only brutal, but also calculated, creating an atmosphere of profound fear among the general population. One of the most haunting aspects of this dark period is the so-called Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo. This group consists of mothers whose children were among the disappeared. They began to gather in Plaza de Mayo in Buenos Aires to demand justice and seek information about their loved ones. Their courage and determination brought national and international attention to human rights violations taking place in Argentina. The mothers walked through the streets, wearing white headscarves as a symbol of their struggle and loss, creating a movement that symbolized resistance amidst oppression. These women faced intimidation and harassment from the military regime, but they continued their fight, becoming powerful advocates for human rights. Their determination not only kept the stories of the disappeared alive, but also galvanized global awareness about the injustices occurring in Argentina. These brave mothers became a symbol of hope, showing that even in darkness, there can be strength and resilience. In the years following the end of the Dirty War, many challenges arose as Argentina sought to come to terms with its past. The transition to democracy in 1983 did not immediately mean accountability for the atrocities committed. For years, the military and the government resisted efforts to bring those responsible for the disappearances to justice. It was only after years of advocacy and public pressure that trials began to hold perpetrators accountable for their actions. The trials that emerged in the 2000s were pivotal, allowing testimonies from survivors and families of the disappeared to be heard. These trials brought some measure of justice, but could never truly heal the wounds left behind. The memories of the disappeared haunt Argentina, forcing the nation to grapple with the impact of this dark era. Art, literature, and film have been used as vehicles for expressing the grief and trauma inflicted on countless families. Artists and writers have sought to give voice to the voiceless and to ensure that the horror of those years is not forgotten. The Dirty War serves as a potent reminder of the fragility of democracy and the importance of human rights. The struggle for justice is ongoing, and the stories of the disappeared remain etched in the collective memory of the nation. Each name carries a weight of sorrow and a call to remember, and every year the plazas fill with vigils and protests that honor those still missing. Argentina has made strides in its pursuit of truth and justice, yet the scars of the past remain. The question of what truly happened to the disappeared continues to linger, while the nation wrestles with its identity and the imperative to remember the past. Education plays a vital role in ensuring that future generations recognize both the tragedies and the resilience that arose from this tumultuous time. As the nation looks forward, it does so with a commitment to honor those who were lost and to continue fighting for a society where such injustices are never repeated. The stories of the disappeared are a crucial thread in the fabric of Argentina's history, reminding us of the human cost of state violence and the enduring power of hope and resistance in the face of overwhelming odds. The Armenian Genocide stands as one of the most harrowing events in human history and a poignant reminder of the consequences of intolerance and hate. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire implemented a widespread campaign that led to the deaths of over 1 million Armenians. The events unfolded in a context of wartime chaos and political turbulence, where ethnic and national identities clashed. The roots of this tragic occurrence can be traced back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As the Ottoman Empire faced challenges from various ethnic groups within its borders, the Armenians, who had long been a significant Christian minority, increasingly found themselves at odds with a predominantly Muslim government. Growing nationalism among various ethnic groups in the empire fostered a climate of suspicion and resentment. As the empire weakened and faced military losses in the war, the Ottoman government perceived the Armenians as a potential threat. This suspicion escalated into a systematic campaign of mass violence and deportation that began in 1915. The atrocities were not just military decisions, but part of an orchestrated plan to eliminate the Armenian presence in the empire. People were rounded up, villages were destroyed, and those who survived the initial wave of violence faced grueling, forced marches into the Syrian desert. During these marches, which lasted for weeks or even months, countless Armenians perished from exhaustion, starvation, and violence at the hands of Ottoman soldiers or local militias. The brutal nature of these events has led historians to characterize it as a genocide, a term that encapsulates the intent to destroy a particular group based on their ethnic identity. It was not merely the loss of life that marked this tragedy. It was the deliberate effort to erase Armenian culture, heritage, and memory. Throughout the subsequent years, the Armenian community around the world has worked tirelessly to educate others about the genocide, with many demanding recognition and justice for the victims. However, the historical narrative surrounding these events remains contentious. Some nations and governments still adhere to a policy of denial, which has impeded acknowledgement and reconciliation. This ongoing reluctance to confront the realities of the past adds layers of complexity to national identities and relationships. Eyewitness accounts from survivors, as well as documentation from diplomats and foreign journalists, depict harrowing tales of loss and suffering. These narratives highlight the resilience of the Armenian people, who, despite facing the most unimaginable hardships, have managed to preserve their identity and culture. The Armenian Genocide is remembered annually on April 24 as a day of commemoration, drawing attention to the need for recognition and understanding from the global community. The implications of the Armenian Genocide extend beyond historical awareness. It serves as a powerful lesson about the dangers of unchecked power, prejudice, and the failure of the international community to act in defense of human rights. Understanding this past is crucial not only for honoring those who suffered but also for fostering a future where such atrocities are not repeated. This connection to history emphasizes the importance of empathy and vigilance in advocating for the oppressed and vulnerable around the globe. As we reflect on the events of the Armenian Genocide, it becomes clear that silence in the face of injustice can perpetuate cycles of violence and suffering. Acknowledging this painful chapter helps to heal wounds and paves the way for dialogue, education, and acceptance. By confronting uncomfortable truths, societies can work towards a more compassionate future, ensuring that the lessons of the past contribute to a more just and equitable world. The legacy of the Armenian Genocide bears witness to the strength of human endurance and the quest for dignity amidst despair. It is a testament to the importance of remembrance and the ongoing struggle for justice. Each year, as the Armenian community continues to advocate for recognition, the call for awareness grows louder, reminding future generations of the responsibility to uphold human rights and prevent history from repeating itself. In this way, the narrative surrounding the Armenian Genocide transcends a single community's suffering. It becomes an integral part of the shared human experience. The resilience of the Armenian spirit and the commitment to ensure that these atrocities are not forgotten compel us to foster understanding, compassion, and respect across all borders. Through education and acknowledgement, we can honor the memory of those lost and strive for a world that values humanity above all else. The firebombing of Dresden represents one of the most devastating and contentious episodes of World War II. This event took place in February 1945, during the final months of the war, when the Allied forces sought to cripple Germany's ability to continue fighting. Dresden, a city known for its cultural significance, architectural beauty, and as a center for German military resources, became a focal point of these intense bombardments. On the night of February 13th into the early morning of February 14th, Allied planes dropped an unprecedented quantity of bombs on Dresden. It is estimated that around 1,300 bombers, primarily from the British Royal Air Force and the United States Army Air Forces, participated in this operation. The strategy behind such a massive aerial assault was to inflict maximum destruction, not only to military targets, but also to inflict psychological pain on Germany as a whole. The bombing was remarkably effective but horrifying in its execution. The initial wave of bombs was designed to create firestorms, igniting the city and producing temperatures so high that they resembled a furnace. Many of the structures, including historical buildings and residential areas, were reduced to rubble almost instantly. Witnesses recounted scenes of chaos, panic, and despair as people tried to escape the inferno. Firestorms so intense generated winds that reached speeds of over 200 miles per hour, pulling in everything flammable in their path, turning the cityscape into a hellish nightmare. As Dresden was known to be a refuge for thousands of fleeing civilians from other parts of Germany, the loss of life was tragically significant. Estimates of civilian casualties from the bombings range widely, with figures between 25,000 and 40,000 lives lost, a staggering number for a city that had not been considered a key military target at the time. This aspect adds a layer of complexity to the bombing's legacy, sparking debates about the morality and ethics behind such a strategic decision. Moreover, the destruction of Dresden called into question the very nature of warfare and the principles of proportionality. Critics argue that the assault was unnecessary and constituted a war crime, especially given that the Allies aimed to end the conflict swiftly, and Germany was already on the verge of defeat. The idea that such an iconic city, affectionately known as the Florence on the Elbe, was obliterated left many people grappling with the implications of total war. In terms of the aftermath, the city faced an extensive rebuilding process that took years. Not just bricks and mortar had to be restored, but also the spirit of the people. Many architectural marvels, such as the Frauenkirche, were lost to the flames, but have since been painstakingly rebuilt as a testament to resilience. The restoration of these cultural icons has become symbolic, representing not only the recovery of Dresden, but also the broader themes of remembrance and reconciliation that have emerged in post-war Europe. In the decades following the war, the firebombing of Dresden has remained a potent subject of interest among historians, writers, and artists. Books and documentaries have sought to dissect the event, examining its impact not only on German society, but also on international law and the rules governing warfare. The debate continues on the justification of using such overwhelming force against a largely civilian population, and whether it expedited an end to the conflict or merely served as a brutal display of power. Artistic expressions of the bombing, including works by Kurt Vonnegut and others, have helped keep the memory of that fateful night alive, transforming a military tactic into an emotional narrative about loss and the fragility of civilization. These works explore the themes of fate, morality, and the absurdity of war, ideas that resonate deeply in the human experience. As we reflect on the firebombing of Dresden, it is crucial to contextualize it within the larger tapestry of World War II and its complex moral landscape. The event stands as a reminder of the consequences of warfare, the devastation that can be unleashed by mankind, and the enduring struggle to understand the depths of human conflict. It also raises fundamental questions about history itself, how we remember, how we empathize, and what lessons we seek to carry into the future. In contemplating such a profound historical event, we can appreciate the layers of human experience tied to stories of devastation and recovery. It emphasizes our shared vulnerability, the importance of preserving cultural heritage, and the resilience that can emerge even in the aftermath of catastrophe. The firebombing of Dresden serves not only as a memory of destruction, but as a reminder of the enduring spirit of humanity. It invites us to reflect on the value of peace and the continuous effort required to cultivate understanding and compassion among nations. The memory of Dresden teaches us much about the past and urges an ongoing dialogue on the implications of our choices in times of conflict. COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program, is an often overlooked yet crucial chapter in American history. Launched in 1956 by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, its primary aim was to surveil, infiltrate, discredit, and disrupt domestic political organizations considered subversive. Initially focused on the Communist Party, the program expanded its targets to include civil rights groups, feminist organizations, environmentalists, and even indigenous rights movements. The operations were cloaked in secrecy, with many of their activities remaining undisclosed for decades. The civil rights movement, a defining period in American history, found itself in the crosshairs of COINTELPRO. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and organizations such as the Southern Christian Leadership Conference were closely monitored. The FBI sought to undermine these leaders' authority and credibility. For instance, King was targeted with extensive surveillance, revealing personal details that the FBI hoped to use to discredit him, to sow discord within the movement, and create rifts in the relationships between its leaders. A particularly notorious tactic was attempting to sow division among activists. The FBI would send anonymous letters to civil rights leaders, pretending to be insiders within the organizations. These letters often contained false claims and malicious gossip, all designed to create distrust and paranoia among members. This was an effort to derail the unified front that civil rights activists had worked hard to build. The Black Panther Party, another target of COINTELPRO, faced aggressive actions that included infiltration and extreme violence. The FBI aimed to neutralize them as a political force through both disinformation and outright force. This included the spread of lies about the group, suggesting they were involved in criminal activities, tactics that contributed to public outcry and stigma against them. The FBI's aggressive campaign included taping conversations, infiltrating their ranks with informants, and even violent raids. Women's rights movements in the 1960s and 70s similarly became victims of COINTELPRO tactics. Fearing the strength and unity of feminist organizations, the FBI sought to disrupt their efforts, employing methods similar to those used against civil rights leaders. They attempted to discredit feminist leaders by circulating damaging rumors and creating dissension among women's groups. Environmentalists also found themselves on the FBI's radar as they began to gain national attention in the late 20th century. Activist groups that opposed environmental degradation were often labeled as radicals. The FBI monitored these organizations, asserting that they posed a threat to national security, an alarming label that led to increased scrutiny and hostility against these advocates for change. Native American activists were not exempt from COINTELPRO's aggressive tactics. The Bureau targeted groups involved in the American Indian movement, which sought to address issues such as treaty rights and the adverse effects of government policy on Native populations. The FBI viewed these activists as threats to the established order. They aimed to undermine their efforts through surveillance and disinformation campaigns, portraying genuine concerns about land rights and tribal sovereignty as extremist behaviors. Though the actions of COINTELPRO were largely executed in the shadows, stories of resistance and resilience emerged from within the communities they targeted. Activists began to recognize the tactics employed against them. The unity fostered by shared struggles often became a source of strength rather than division. In the long run, many of these movements could adapt and evolve, learning from the tactics used against them, which ultimately contributed to their historical significance and success. The revelations of COINTELPRO operations became public in the early 1970s, particularly after the Church Committee, which sought to investigate abuses by intelligence agencies. Public outcry ensued, launching debates about civil liberties, privacy, and the ethical boundaries of governmental surveillance. COINTELPRO became synonymous with the excessive lengths to which the FBI would go in attempting to control dissent and dissenters. The story of COINTELPRO is not just a narrative of repression, it is also one of defiance. Many activists not only persisted, despite the challenges posed by these covert operations, but also adapted their strategies. This resilience has been inspiring, with movements learning to be vigilant and aware of governmental actions, while maintaining their mission of equality, justice, and truth. Today, the legacy of COINTELPRO serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle against government overreach and the importance of protecting civil rights. Contemplating the past empowers us to reflect on current issues of surveillance and civil liberties, prompting questions about the balance between national security and the right to dissent. Understanding COINTELPRO helps contextualize contemporary movements, encouraging vigilance and unity among those who fight for social change. Reflecting on history, we come to see COINTELPRO not just as an operation that focused on dismantling movements, but also as a catalyst for galvanizing a diverse array of activism that continues to thrive. The fight for justice, equality, and recognition persistently shapes the fabric of American society, echoing the resistance to oppressive tactics of the past. Each story of perseverance and collective action reminds us that, even in the face of formidable opposition, voices for change will not remain silenced, but will continue to resonate through time. Understanding this history empowers us all to recognize the significance of advocacy and to safeguard the rights we hold dear. The Guatemalan Coup of 1954 is a significant, yet often overlooked chapter in the history of U.S. foreign intervention in Latin America. To understand this event, we need to look at both the international context and the local dynamics of Guatemala at the time. In the early 20th century, Guatemala is a country rich in natural resources, particularly agricultural products such as coffee and bananas. However, it faced challenges such as economic inequality, political corruption, and social unrest. After gaining independence from Spain in the 19th century, Guatemala saw a series of dictators and military leaders come to power. The situation changed in 1944, when a popular democratic revolution led to the election of Juan José Arevalo as president. He was succeeded by Jacobo Arbenz in 1951, who continued to implement progressive reforms. These reforms aimed to modernize the economy, address land distribution issues, and improve education and healthcare for the masses. For the first time, many Guatemalans felt they had a say in their nation's future, and the nation began heading towards increased stability and development. However, this trajectory alarmed powerful interests, particularly the United Fruit Company, an American multinational corporation that held vast land estates in Guatemala. The company's control over the country and the government was significant. It played a crucial role in shaping policies and exerted considerable influence over U.S. domestic politics. Arbenz's land reforms, which involved the redistribution of unused land owned by United Fruit to landless farmers, threatened the company's interests directly. In response to this perceived threat, United Fruit worked closely with the U.S. government to orchestrate opposition against Arbenz. As the Cold War intensified, U.S. officials viewed Guatemala through the lens of anti-communism. They feared that Arbenz's reforms and his ties with leftist political groups could lead to a communist foothold in Central America. The CIA dubbed their operation against him as PBS Success, aiming to replace Arbenz with a more compliant regime. In June 1954, they began a campaign of psychological warfare, including propaganda that spread fear among the military and civil society. Through this operation, the U.S. destabilized the Arbenz government without a formal declaration of war, showcasing a covert approach that became characteristic of Cold War interventions. As tensions escalated, the CIA organized a force of exiled Guatemalan insurgents and launched airstrikes against government installations. The resulting chaos led to military defections and widespread panic. On June 27, 1954, Arbenz resigned under pressure, marking a turning point in Guatemala's history. He sought asylum in Mexico, and the CIA installed a military dictator, Carlos Castillo Armas, who reversed many of Arbenz's progressive reforms. The consequences of the coup were profound. The United States intervention destabilized the country, setting the stage for decades of civil war and violence. Following the coup, Guatemala entered a period of oppressive government, characterized by human rights abuses and repression of dissent. Political turmoil reigned, and various insurgent groups emerged, eventually leading to a brutal civil war that lasted until the peace accords were signed in 1996. The war claimed hundreds of thousands of lives and left deep scars on Guatemalan society. Despite these events, the story of the 1954 coup and its aftermath is rarely included in educational curricula, especially within the United States. The reasons for this omission are complex. It may stem from a desire to maintain a narrative that emphasizes democratic ideals rather than the actions that undermine them. Many schools prefer to focus on other historical incidents perceived as more straightforward in their moral framing. Understanding the Guatemalan coup of 1954 invites us to reflect on the lessons of history. The consequences of interventionism extend far beyond borders. They affect people's lives in profound and sometimes tragic ways. As we analyze the past, it is vital to consider the broader implications of foreign policy decisions and their long-term impacts on nations and their people. Exploring this history emphasizes the stories of the Guatemalan people, whose lives were altered dramatically due to external intervention. It allows us to appreciate the complexity of our world and the interconnectedness of various actors. Recognizing that these dynamics can lead to unintended consequences is crucial in comprehending current global relationships. Moreover, examining the past with a critical lens encourages us to approach modern foreign policy with caution and consideration. The narratives woven by history remind us of the importance of listening to the voices of those affected by such decisions. By keeping these stories alive, we honor the resilience of the people and allow their experiences to inform our understanding of justice, governance, and the pursuit of equity. The Guatemalan coup of 1954 is more than a historical event. It is a reminder of the power struggles that shape nations. It underscores the reality that history is not merely about dates and names, but involves the hopes, struggles, and ambitions of individuals facing systemic challenges. As we reflect on this narrative, we should strive for a future where the lessons of the past guide our actions, fostering a more just and equitable world for all.